Chapter 54. This time, everyone perked up their ears and listened carefully. After confirming that they did not hear wrongly, all the officials became excited. The Minister of Rights, Hu Shao, reacted even faster. With a plop, he knelt on the ground and wept in the direction of Ingzong. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. With this item, our great Ming dynasty will no longer be plagued by hunger. Following this, the country will be prosperous and the people will be at peace. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Congratulations." In an instant, all the officials except for Yang Qindong knelt on the ground. There were even some who were crying and laughing, as if they had gone crazy. Ingzong, who was sitting on the dragon throne, finally understood what had happened. After being the emperor for so many years, he naturally knew the importance of food. Now that he heard that there was a solution, he was naturally overjoyed. When he looked at Yang Qindong, his face was filled with joy. He wasn't angry at all because Yang Qindong didn't kneel down. Instead, he asked in a friendly voice, "But I wonder where is the grain that my beloved Yang Qindong mentioned?" When the words were spoken, all the officials looked at each other. They were so happy that they had forgotten where this item was. If they said that it was on the sea, it would be difficult for them. After all, everyone knew that Yang Qindong had brought the 3 godly mirrors from the sea for the palace. There were even many officials who went to look at them. They could clearly see the reflection of their hair. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a godly item. Fortunately, Yang Qindong didn't continue to stimulate everyone's nerves. He answered confidently, "It's in the Yang Manor 15 miles south of the city. However, because most of them are still in the growing period and haven't fully matured, it's not suitable to harvest them now." Hearing that the item was 15 li away from the capital, how could Ingzong and the officials wait? "Even if we can't harvest it, we can at least take a look, right?" Naturally, this question was asked by Wang Zhuo. "Of course you can. Not only can you look at them, but you can also harvest a small amount of them. You can even make some for everyone to taste and experience the taste of this new food." Since he had decided to offer the potatoes, naturally, Yang Qindong didn't have the slightest intention of hiding it. Regardless of whether he would be disappointed in the Great Ming Dynasty or whether he would replace the Great Ming Dynasty, there was one thing that was always right, and that was that this thing was something that would benefit the common people. With it, more people would be able to avoid the end of starvation. Hearing that not only would they be able to harvest some, but they would also be able to taste it, the crowd became excited. Even Ingzong became very happy. "All right, since that's the case, let's go to Yang Village to take a look. Let's see the true auspicious item of our great Ming Dynasty." The emperor gave the order, and naturally, all the officials agreed in unison. After that, the embroidered uniform guards and the eunuchs got busy. The emperor was going out of the palace, and this wasn't a small matter. The problem of the route and the responsibility of safety had to be clearly prepared. When Wang Zhuo and the other important officials knew the location, how could they wait any longer? They kept urging them, and even ignored Wang Zhan's winking at the side, reminding the officials to be calm. Ingzong was 20 years old, and he was also someone who couldn't sit still. Seeing that this kind of preparation was going to take a long time, he immediately waved his hand and said, "There's no need to make such a big fuss. Zhan will be with the officials, so how can there be any danger? Let the embroidered uniform guards and the Eastern Palace guards each arrange 500 people to protect Jin." Even though it was just a small matter, they still mobilized 1,000 people. This made Yang Qindong speechless. However, the officials once again knelt on the ground and praised the emperor for being wise. Yang Qindong could see that no matter what the emperor did, as long as it wasn't cutting off the heads of the officials, it was a wise thing to say. It was no wonder that most of the emperors were fooled. Under this kind of situation where they were praised every day, there were probably not many people who could withstand it. The officials were anxious, and Ingzong was also very anxious. He just changed into a set of golden dragon robes, which was more convenient for walking, and followed everyone out of the palace. In a moment, the streets were cleared, and the people of the warden's office of the 5 cities also followed to maintain the order of the city. The group of people left the Forbidden City, passed through Changtian Gate, Daming Gate, and Jingyang Gate, and reached the outer city. From Yongding Gate, they rushed to the Yongjia village. The large group of people was mighty, and the common people on the side of the road were very curious. What happened? Why did the emperor leave the palace? Beside the dragon carriage were civil and military officials. Everyone was in a hurry, and their footsteps were hurried, as if they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to keep up with the group. Could it be that something happened? Did the Wale attack us? The common people were still suspicious, but the group was moving faster and faster until they disappeared from the capital, leaving behind a trail of dust, Yongjia village. According to the 6th young master's orders, Tiger's Mane had already made preparations, and several large pots were set up beside the manor. The cook, Ichioer, was so excited that her face was as red as an apple. Just now, Tiger's Mane had told her that she would be cooking for others today. It was just that these diners were not ordinary people, but were very likely to be the officials of the great Ming dynasty. It was even possible that the emperor would appear. Heavens! This was cooking for the emperor. Wouldn't that make her an imperial chef? At this moment, Ichioer was very excited. The old steward, Yang Hai, brought Yang Ning out of the manor. From time to time, he would instruct his son. The 6th young master is a very capable person, the kind of great talent that only appears once every few hundred years. In the future, you must follow the 6th young master and do your best. Yang Ning was a simple and honest person, and in fact, he had a steady and honest personality. After listening to his father's instructions countless times, he still spoke as if it was the first time he had heard them. Father, don't worry. Nang, I will definitely do my best to serve the 6th young master. No, it's the young master. Nang, didn't you see that Xiaoyin, Tiger's Mane, and even the cook, Ichioer, all call him the young master? Let me tell you, the Yang family will rely on the 6th young master in the future. Calling him the young master is not a bad thing, do you know? Even if others want to call him that, they don't have the qualifications. Yang Hai turned around and reprimanded his son. But father, why do you still call him the 6th young master? Yang Nang was confused. Nanger, father is someone who follows the old master, and I'm old. I can't and don't have the energy to serve other masters. I can't change the way I call him the 6th young master, but you're different. Do you understand? Yang Hai shook his head. If he were 20 years younger, why would he give the opportunity to follow Yang Qindong to someone else? Fortunately, Yang Ning was the son he was most satisfied with, so the benefits didn't flow out. In the end, the meat rotted in his family's pot. Oh, this time, Yang Ning didn't dare to refute. It wasn't that he didn't understand, but he still nodded to show that he understood. Just as the two of them were talking, dozens of riders came from afar. The leader of the riders was the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Zhongning. At that time, when he heard Yang Qindong say that there was an auspicious omen that could produce up to 10 to 20 dan of grain per mu, he was also shocked. Then he understood that this time he benefited from it. In his happiness, he personally took the lead and wanted to come to Yang village to make arrangements. He didn't want to anger the emperor because the people in the village didn't know how to do things. That would be a big loss for a small gain. They're here. Yang Hai saw the imperial soldiers in flying suits rushing over from afar. He hurriedly said to his son, Yang Ning, "Open the village gate and inform the people in the village that the family is not allowed to go out." Yang Ning ran to inform the others, leaving Yang Hai, Tiger's Mane, and Beta Persei to meet Hu Zhongning and the others. Hu Zhongning didn't notice the others, but when he saw Beta Persei, his pupils contracted. Although it had been a long time, he still remembered how Rinpochian dealt with his two subordinates. It was as easy as an adult beating a child. Whoosh! Hu Zhongning took the lead and dismounted from the horse. "I am the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Zhongning. Who will answer me? I am Yang Village's steward, Yang Hai." Greetings, Your Excellency. Yang Hai cupped his fist and greeted him. So it's Steward Yang. Hu Zhangning also cupped his fist and greeted him. Then he hurriedly said, "The emperor and the civil and military officials will be here soon. You should quickly make some preparations." The old and young in the village, before Hu Zhangning could finish, Yang Hai had already answered with a smile. "Please rest assured, Lord Hu, the sixth young master has already made arrangements. Everything in the village has also been prepared. Please rest assured, Your Excellency." Hu Zhangning raised his right hand and patted his forehead with a wry smile. In his heart, he thought even more highly of Yang Qindong. This person had already planned everything. The beating up of Wang Go in the morning was probably also part of his plan. At such a young age, he already had such a strategy. Today, he was going to make a great contribution. From the looks of it, his future was limitless. If his daughter really married such a man, it would be a wonderful thing. Next, Hu Zhangning brought the Imperial Guard team into the village to carefully inspect it. After all, the emperor had personally come. Nothing could be careless. When he saw that the manor was indeed in order, and there were even 10 farmers who were skilled in farming standing in front of the land that was used for harvesting in advance, he was completely at ease. Less than an hour later, a group of people arrived at the entrance of the Yang clan manor. The group of people surrounded the dragon carriage and passed through the entrance of the village, finally stopping in front of the village's land. A group of Eastern faction guards and Imperial guards completely surrounded this place to ensure that not even a bird could fly in. Ingzong Zhu Qijin, accompanied by his teacher, Wang Zhen, walked out of the dragon carriage and came to the field of crops. To be honest, this should be the first time Ingzong came to a field of crops. There was a trace of curiosity on his face. He pointed at the dry soil on the ground and asked, "Where is Minister Yang? Is this the place where the grain that can yield 15 dan per mu that you mentioned is here?" Chapter 55. Replying to Your Majesty, that is correct. Yang Qindong forced his way through the crowd. There was nothing he could do about it. Just a moment ago, a few important officials had pulled him aside and asked him all sorts of questions. They asked him what the name of this thing was and how to eat it. It caused him to answer one question after another, and they all gave the same answer to everyone. However, there were still many people who did not speak to him. He did not know if those people were still sulking in their hearts. Ingzong nodded and then carefully looked at the ground beside his feet. The densely packed stems and leaves were already showing signs of withering. He asked curiously, "Beloved official Yang, are you talking about this thing?" Looking at the stems and leaves from afar, it looked like soybeans that were still in the planting stage. At this moment, not only Ingzong, but the other important officials were also puzzled. They did not understand. This thing did not look very densely packed. So how could it produce more than 15 dan per mu? Also, how was this thing eaten? Was it eaten like vegetable leaves? Yang Qindong knew that everyone was puzzled. He immediately walked forward in large strides. When he arrived in front of a thick stem and leaf, he pointed and said, "This is the stem and leaf. It cannot be eaten. Of course, if you are hungry, you can eat it. However, the taste is not good. Its true secret lies at the bottom of the stem and leaf. Because it grows in the soil and is like a bean dozens of times bigger, it is called a potato." While explaining, Yang Qindong bent down and smiled at the crowd. With a slight force from his arm, the plant was lifted up along with its stem and leaves. At the roots that were pulled out of the soil, there were a few fist-sized earthy yellow fruits in front of everyone. Seeing the potato in Yang Qindong's hand, under the sunlight, the officials all sucked in a breath of cold air. He saw that there were 4 fist-sized potatoes on the roots, each weighing more than 1 jin. This was amazing. One plant could produce 4 jin. 1 mu of land with 1,000 plants. Wouldn't that mean 4,000 jin? In that case, wouldn't 1 dan be equal to 188 jin? Wouldn't that mean that 1 mu of land could produce more than 20 dan? At this moment, all of their doubts disappeared. While everyone was still in shock, Only Yang Qindong still had a look of dissatisfaction on his face as he said, "There are only 4 of them. There should be 5 or 6 of them. Also, it's not fully mature yet. In another half a month, it will grow a little." As he spoke, Yang Qindong bent down and plucked another potato under the watchful eyes of the crowd. This time, there were 6 fruits on it, and they were not much smaller than the previous one. Only then did Yang Qindong nod his head in satisfaction. Boom! Among the ministers, after seeing this scene, some of them with weak hearts and weak endurance had already fainted on the ground. 6 fruits per stalk, that's 6 caddies. Doesn't this mean that the yield per moo can reach more than 30 dawn? The fainted minister was carried away by the embroidered uniform guards, and the imperial physicians who had followed them out came forward to treat him. Those ministers who had not fainted had indeed squeezed forward one by one, wanting to personally pull out a stalk to try. Seeing that everyone was moving forward together, it was inevitable that the bean sprouts would be trampled on. At this moment, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Zhua, played his role as an old minister. "Everyone stand back. If anyone dares to move forward, they will be executed." With this shout, everyone quieted down. Then, Wang Zhua knelt down in front of Ingzong with a face full of tears. "Your Majesty, please punish this minister for overstepping his authority." It's fine. Beloved official Wang is just acting out of love. We understand. Ingzong laughed and reached out to help Wang Zhua up. "Next, we will each pull out a potato and see who can pull out the most. How about it?" To be able to work together with the emperor was naturally something that all of the ministers wished for. Even if it was just harvesting crops together, it was also a kind of glory. For a moment, many envious gazes landed on Wang Zhua. Wang Zhua did not hear or see anything. Now that his gaze had landed on the potatoes, there was nothing else that could attract his attention. This minister obeys. Wang Zhua bowed and replied. Ingzong laughed and looked at Yang Qindong on the side. "Beloved official Yang, will it be fine for us and official Wang to do this?" It's fine. There are only 10 mu of land here, and it has been hastened. It was originally meant for the emperor and all of you to harvest everything. Just do as you please. In a while, when we leave, everyone can bring some back for their families to try." Yang Qindong laughed and had an indifferent expression. "Good. Then I will go with beloved official Wang first. In a while, everyone will work in pairs. Remember, you must not trample on or waste this heaven-bestowed item." Ingzong spoke heavenly words and labeled the potatoes as a heaven-bestowed item. For a moment, all of the ministers cheered loudly. On the other hand, Yang Qindong had a bitter expression. It was clearly his contribution. How did it become a heaven-bestowed item? All right, even he was brought here by the heavens, including the entire warehouse. Then it was only right for the heavens to take some advantage. Moreover, Ingzong's luck was not bad. He actually pulled out 6 potatoes at once. Wang Zhua was a bit worse. He only pulled out 5 fruits. However, this was enough for them to be excited. Reality had already proven that 20 dan per mu was the lowest yield. This way, the people of the world would not have to face the pain of starvation because of a lack of food. Once Ingzong and Wang Zhua left, Hu Xiao and Minister of War Kuang Yi walked forward. They became the second batch to pull out the potatoes. Yang Qindong did not pay attention to the actions of the ministers. Even if it was a bit of trampling and wasting, it did not affect the overall situation. Now was the time to let everyone have a taste of the potatoes. Walking in front of Ingzong and Wang Zhua, Yang Qindong said with a smile, "Emperor, official Wang, you don't mind if this official uses the potatoes you pulled out to cook, right?" "Haha, of course we don't mind. We also want to have a taste of these potatoes." Ingzong laughed loudly. Wang's mood was also very good. "All right, then I will bask in the emperor's light and also have a taste of these delicious potatoes. Also, I asked Governor Yang to take this and cook it as well." "Oh, I shouldn't call you Governor Yang anymore. For this great merit, the emperor will definitely reward you." It was unknown when Wang Jin came over. He was also holding a potato with 6 fruits in his hand. Of course, no one knew whether he had pulled out the 6 pills himself or whether he had snatched them from someone else. Hearing Wang Zhen's sudden words, Yang Qindong naturally responded with a grateful smile. Perhaps only Wang Zhen would be able to take credit in front of the emperor and be so straightforward. Even if the other ministers wanted to ask for credit, they would have to avoid it. That's right. Ying Zong, who was reminded, nodded heavily. This time, beloved official Yang has made a great contribution. He should be greatly rewarded. Although it was said to be a great reward, Ying Zong wasn't mentally prepared for it. He also didn't know how to promote Yang Qindong. Thus, his gaze fell on Wang Zhua and asked, Beloved official Wang, in your opinion, how should we reward beloved official Yang? This subject boldly suggests that he should be transferred to the Ministry of Revenue. Wang Zhua had a good impression of Yang Qindong. For him to be able to contribute such a good thing, it was enough to prove that he wasn't a selfish person. Of course, he wanted to promote him. First, he would transfer him to his own ministry. After that, he could make adjustments at any time. When he heard that he was going to be transferred to an actual position, Yang Qindong immediately shook his head and said, Your Majesty, I don't dare to dare. This subject doesn't dare to be greedy. The appearance of the potato is because Your Majesty's benevolence in governing the country was moved by the heavens. Thus, this auspicious item was bestowed to Your Majesty. As for this subject, it was just a coincidence that I obtained this item. It really can't be considered a great merit. This subject is still young and still very playful. This is the first time I came to the capital and haven't seen the prosperity of this place. I still want to open a restaurant and enjoy the scenery of the world. Attributing the merit to the emperor was something that should be done. What was that saying? If you made a contribution, it was the good of the leader. If you did something wrong, then it was because you couldn't understand the intentions of the leader. It had nothing to do with the leader. Yang Qindong gave the merit to Zhu Qijin. This was something that should be done. As long as he didn't lack benefits, it was fine. He took the opportunity to say that he was still young and wanted to play for a few more years. Presumably, no one would not understand. Ying Zong, who was standing at the side, was originally prepared to agree to Wang Zhua's request and send Yang Qindong to the Ministry of Revenue. But when he heard Yang Qindong's words, he suddenly felt elated. The appearance of the potato, this auspicious item, was actually because of his benevolence in governing the country. It seemed that he was a wise ruler. In an instant, his mood improved. He also knew that Yang Qindong was still young and wanted to play for another 2 years. Thus he smiled and agreed. Since that's the case, Yang Qindong listened to the decree. This subject, Yang Qindong, receives the decree. At this moment, Yang Qindong obediently knelt down. There was no other way. Under this kind of system, it was impossible for his knees not to go soft. Yang Qindong of the Yang family is bestowed the title of High Scholar. He will be promoted to horse washing, also known as First Horse, assisting the Crown Prince, effective immediately. Without saying too much, Ying Zong considered for a moment and gave Yang Qindong a reward. Bestowing the title of High Scholar meant that Yang Qindong did not need to take the elementary scholar examination. Horse washing was a secondary class, rank 5 official. His specific duties were to be the Crown Prince's attendant. It was just that Zhu Qijin did not have a Crown Prince yet. Although the imperial court did not set any rules, they had already reached an agreement. Only those who were rank 5 or above were allowed to do business. Ying Zong made this decision in consideration of the fact that Yang Qindong would be opening a restaurant in the near future. He was paving the way for him. Being promoted from rank 9 to secondary class 5 was equivalent to being promoted by 7 ranks. In addition to the title of High Scholar, although it was still lacking compared to the contribution of the potato, it was not too far off. The most important thing was that Yang Qindong was still too young. He was only 18 years old, and there were many opportunities for him to be promoted in the future. From the looks of it, the rewards were quite generous. What Yang Qindong wanted was to be a rank 5 official. Only then would he be able to do things properly. As for the actual position, he had not thought about it. He also did not have the energy and time to do things for the imperial court. Now that he had gotten what he wanted, he immediately knelt down and thanked the emperor. Chapter 56. However, at the same time, he also asked for an imperial edict. In order to cultivate potatoes, he needed to live in the Yang family manor and could not attend court unless there was something important. Regarding this, Ingzong was in a good mood and naturally agreed. He was just a minor class 5 official, so there was no need for him to attend court. As for living outside the capital, since he liked it, he could do as he pleased. This was also Yang Qindong's plan for the future. After receiving the imperial edict, no one would be able to urge him to live in the capital. This way, he would have a lot of autonomy in terms of his safety. In other words, he would have more protection. Like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate, Yang Qindong had accomplished something that others couldn't do for many years in an instant. When he stood up, there were waves of congratulations around him. He also cupped his fists towards his colleagues to express his gratitude. Then he laughed and said, "Since everyone is here today, let's have a taste of the potatoes." This official has already arranged for the kitchen maids to make many types of potatoes. Good. Everyone was very happy to have such a high yield of potatoes. This was a great thing that benefited the country and the people. Moreover, it had nothing to do with anyone's benefit. Naturally, everyone was happy. However, there were also some shrewd officials who were thinking about how to befriend Yang Qindong and then get more seeds to cultivate in their own manors. This way, they would not have to worry about using money to buy food in the future. The officials all had their own plans. Minister of Revenue Wang Zhuo had already seen through them and proposed to the emperor that the seeds should be distributed reasonably. Otherwise, once these seeds were spread outside the country, the enemies would become stronger and threaten the safety of the great Ming dynasty. This was an experienced schemer. At the end of the Ming dynasty, the 8 great Jin merchants of Shaanxi had sent large amounts of military equipment and food to Liaodong to sell to the slaves Jian. This caused them to become stronger and stronger. In the end, the great Ming dynasty had to spend a large amount of military resources every year, causing the national treasury to be empty. They had no choice but to eat from the common people, causing the peasant uprising to become more and more powerful. This caused the great Ming dynasty to collapse internally, creating an opportunity for the slaves Jian to enter the Ming dynasty. Now that the potato production was so high, if the seeds were to be spread out once Walla and the others got their hands on them, they would have enough food to recruit more soldiers. As a result, the bigger they became, the more of a threat they would pose to the great Ming dynasty. Although Ingzong was young and inexperienced, he knew the importance of potatoes. He looked at Wang Zhuo and asked, "Does Minister Wang have any ideas?" "Your Majesty, there is no way to completely put an end to it. Just now I asked Sir Horace Washing Poplar, and he said that the planting of potatoes is very convenient. You only need to wait for the potatoes to mature and sprout before planting them. Next year, you will be able to obtain a large number of fruits. Unless all the potatoes were kept to themselves, they would inevitably be taken by others. And such a good thing should be planted all over the country. Only when it's widely used can more people benefit." Wang Zhuo shook his head. There is no such thing as guarding against thieves for 1,000 days in this world. Even if you wanted to guard against them, you had to be able to guard against them first. Initially, Zhang Xian thought that Wang Zhuo had a good idea since he had said so much. But after listening for a while, it seemed that there was no solution. Zhang Xian's expression couldn't help but become ugly as he asked, "Since that's the case, what does Minister Wang mean?" Wang Zhuo hesitated for a moment. He knew that what he was going to say next might offend some people. But when he thought about the great Ming's eternal prosperity, it seemed that he could only offend them. Thus he said, "Your Majesty, this subject wishes to ask you to issue a decree. Before any diplomatic mission leaves the border, They must be checked to see if they are carrying potatoes. Once they are found, all the envoys will be detained and arrested as spies. But if they are found to be smuggling potatoes out of the border, they will be heavily punished, and 9 generations of their families will be punished. When he said 9 generations of their families will be punished, Wang's heart skipped a beat. He knew that this was a bit too ruthless and the punishment was too heavy. But when he considered the impact that potatoes could bring, he still felt that this kind of punishment wasn't excessive. A person who didn't even care about the country could no longer be called a person. Thus, any punishment wouldn't be excessive. When Wang's was said this, he was shocked. When Ingzong heard this, his eyes suddenly widened. However, it only took an instant for him to recover. The great Ming was the great Ming of the Zhou family. If this country was destroyed, perhaps the officials could continue to be officials after defecting, but he would no longer be able to become the emperor. Thus, if potatoes were to spread, the one who would suffer the greatest loss would be him. What was there that he couldn't be heartless about? All right, we understand. After we return to the palace, write a decree and announce it to the world. Ingzong Zhu Qijin decisively made a decision. Your Majesty is wise. After Wang's finished reporting this matter, he immediately felt his body relax. At this moment, it was as if more than half of the strength in his body had been sucked out. The potatoes and pork ribs are ready. Following Yang Qindong's shout, the fragrance from the big pot immediately spread out for 3 li. It attracted the hundreds of officials who had just finished harvesting the potatoes to gather around like gluttonous worms. Wash the pork ribs and potatoes and prepare them. Put the pork ribs into the pot and add cooking wine. Then, turn on the fire and cook them. Drain the cooked pork ribs and set them aside. Add oil and pepper into the pot and stir-fry the pork ribs. Then, add soy sauce and other seasoning. Then, pour the pork ribs into the pot and stir-fry the potatoes. Finally, remove the MSG from the pot. The hot and sour onion shredded potatoes are ready. Cut the potatoes and soak them in water. Peel the onions and wash them and cut them into shreds. Wash the green and red peppers and cut them into shreds. Pour oil into the wok and stir-fry the chives, ginger, garlic, and dried chilies. Pour in the shredded potatoes and stir-fry them for a while. Add in some water and stir-fry the onions. Add in soy sauce, sugar, and a suitable amount of salt and stir-fry them. Pour in some balsamic vinegar and stir-fry them evenly. Then, add in some sesame oil and stir-fry them. After the 2 potato dishes, 1 meat and 1 vegetable, were done, there were chopped pepper potato slices, fried potato strips, hot and sour shredded potatoes, eggplant stewed potatoes, braised potato chicken, rice potato cakes, spicy dry pot potato slices, honey, juicy potatoes, scallion potato stir-fry, crispy fried potatoes, mincemeat, and so on. Steaming the whole potato could also satisfy one's hunger. For many people who tasted potatoes for the first time, they felt that it was a kind of delicacy. A single potato could be used to make nearly 20 different dishes. While everyone ate heartily, they also praised it loudly. In addition, the cooking skills of the kitchen maid Yi Qiu'er was not bad. Together with the MSG that Yang Qindong made, which was only available in Jianing and had not spread to the capital, everyone ate until their mouths were full of oil. Even Ingzong ate 2 bowls of rice and a steamed potato with the dishes. If it wasn't for Wang Jin, who was serving beside him, reminding him, he might have eaten another bowl. After eating so much, Ingzong said with a joyful expression, "We are looking forward to when beloved official Yang's restaurant will be open for business." Replying, Your Majesty, it will be open soon. It should be open within a month. When that time comes, Your Majesty can come and give us your opinion if you have time. Yang Qindong chuckled. He did not fight with the other officials to eat the potatoes. To him, this thing had been eaten for decades and had long lost its freshness. Thus, he had been playing the role of a waiter. When he saw an empty plate on the outdoor table, he would order someone to serve it. He was extremely busy. His reply to Ingzong was not perfunctory. Before they came, Yang Hai had already chosen a location for the restaurant. Even the new manager had been found. It was his cousin Yang Fu. When Yang Fu was in Jianing Prefecture, he had worked very happily with Yang Qindong and earned a lot of money. Seeing that the sixth young master was about to go to the capital, he was also tempted and wanted to discuss it with him. Yang Qindong was just thinking about who would be the most suitable person to manage the restaurant. When he saw Yang Fu jump out, he immediately agreed and hired Yang Fu to manage the restaurant with 10% of the shares. Yang Fu knew that the capital was not like Jianing. The human relations there were complicated, and it was not something that a merchant like him could understand. With the banner of sixth cousin, it would be much easier to do some things. Furthermore, 10% of the shares was not a small amount. He immediately accepted the agreement and brought Yang Qindong's blueprint to the capital. Only after coming to the capital and seeing those blueprints did Yang Fu realize just how extravagant his sixth cousin was. Just the initial investment had reached 50,000 taels, and just the renovation alone had cost him another 100,000 taels. Just what was he planning to build? Was he going to build a small palace? Of course, Yang Fu did not understand. Only when the required items were brought into the restaurant did he realize how ignorant he was before. Only now did he know how much his 10% share was worth. As the saying went, there was no harm if there was no comparison. At this moment, he realized that the Four Seas restaurant in Jianing Prefecture was as simple as a child playing house. Putting aside the restaurant, Ingzong heard Yang Qindong's invitation. Thinking about how the other party had made such a great contribution, he should satisfy this small request. He immediately nodded and said, "All right, if there is time, we will go and take a look." With just this sentence, the other officials naturally understood what was going on. In the future, if they wanted to find trouble with anyone, they shouldn't go looking for trouble with the Yang clan restaurant. If they didn't handle it well, they might end up offending the emperor. Yang Qindong was still busy. He even called for everyone to bring back some of the potatoes they had dug up, so that they could let their families have a taste. This was naturally met with cheers from the officials. Ingzong finished eating first and prepared to return. He called for Yang Qindong and said, "Beloved official Yang, I will leave a group of embroidered uniform guards and the Eastern Depot here to help you guard the potatoes that have not been harvested yet. Thank you, Your Majesty." Yang Qindong naturally knew that since the potatoes had been exposed, it was no longer his problem alone. As such, he had already mentally prepared himself for this. Very good. Satisfied with Yang Qindong's attitude, Ingzong continued, "As for how many potato seeds to keep and how to distribute them, I will have Sir and the rest of you discuss them together." "Right. What is the name of your restaurant?" "Replying, Your Majesty, the Immortal Abode." Yang Qindong replied confidently. Chapter 57. Immortal Abode. What a good name. Ha ha ha. Ingzong was stunned at first, but then he began to laugh heartily. Very good. When the Immortal Abode opens for business, we will personally visit and taste the delicacies of your restaurants. This subject will definitely welcome Your Majesty's arrival with open arms. How could Yang Qindong not see that Ingzong was giving him face? Ingzong had only said that he had time, but now that he had confirmed it, his attitude had changed. He immediately knelt on the ground again and shouted, "Long live Your Majesty!" The other officials also saw this scene clearly. They couldn't help but look at Yang Qindong with envy. This person was only 18, right? Back then, they were still studying when they were at this age. Some of them didn't even pass the Shiozai examination. However, the other party was already a secondary grade 5 official and even received the favor of the emperor. It was really infuriating to compare oneself with others. Ingzong left the Yang clan manor under the protection of a group of guards. However, the other officials didn't leave. Some of them still hadn't eaten their fill, while others were waiting. They were waiting for Yang Qindong to fulfill his promise and bring back a few extra potatoes to share with their families. Since he had already promised, Yang Qindong naturally kept his word. He arranged for Tiger's Mane, Yang Hai, Yang Ning, and the others to gather the potatoes first, then distribute them according to their rank. Every official received at least 5 kilograms, and if that wasn't enough, they could just scavenge more. At the very least, he still had the final say on how to distribute the potatoes. Moreover, this kind of opportunity to make friends with the officials was rare. How could Yang Qindong give it up so easily? Because of Yang Qindong's magnanimity, the officials all returned satisfied. Even the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua, who had always been known as a miser, was all smiles. Before leaving, he said to Yang Qindong, "Yang Shima, you have to take good care of those potatoes. Also, my Ministry of Revenue's plantation needs 10,000 mu of potato seeds. This cannot be discounted." Don't worry. Yang Qindong patted his chest and promised. Potatoes were still a rare commodity in the great Ming dynasty, and they had already been planted in the surrounding areas of Crimson City. Once they ran out of seeds, they could just plant them from there. Furthermore, there were still bags of potatoes piled up like mountains in the big warehouse. If there was a need, they could be taken out immediately. The biggest advantage of the big warehouse was that everything placed there was very fresh. There was no expiration date at all. This allowed Yang Qindong to use the things there without worry. As long as he didn't take them out, they would be as good as new. With Yang Qindong's guarantee, Wang Zhua left satisfied. All the officials left, leaving only Wang Zhen and his disciples strolling around nearby. From time to time, he would arrange for the people of the Eastern faction guards to guard all the key points. Other than the people of Yang Village, no one else was allowed to casually approach. Otherwise, they would be directly arrested and imprisoned. Wang Zhen seemed to be patiently giving instructions. Yang Qindong smiled at all of this. He knew that this wasn't because Wang Zhen was responsible for his work, but because he wanted to chat with him and get some benefits. He didn't want to complicate matters. More importantly, Yang Qindong's faction was still rather weak, and he urgently needed to find an ally. If Wang Zhen could be of help, he didn't mind sharing some benefits with him. Of course, this still depended on whether this person was tactful or not. Otherwise, if he was really provoked, he could just walk out of the capital. At that time, the heavens were vast, but there would be far too many places for him to stay. Eunuch Wang, would you like to enter the study of the manor? Seeing that Wang Zhen's gaze had already swept over him no less than 5 times, Yang Qindong knew that it was about time. If he continued to endure, he might burn. Oh, my Yang is too polite. This duke just happens to be a little thirsty. Wang Zhen tactfully gave Wang Chong a way out, and then the two of them laughed at each other before making their way into the Yang clan manor. In the study, Yang Qindong dismissed everyone, not even Xiaoyin. He sat across from Wang Zhen and assumed a negotiating stance. Wang Zhen had been in power for many years and had seen all sorts of situations. He was unhurried, lightly nodding as he tasted the tea leaves in his hand. He appeared to be enjoying himself. The tea leaves that Yang Qindong could bring out weren't very good, only a little better than those sold on the streets. They couldn't enter the eyes of someone like Wang Zhen, who had seen many top-quality tea leaves. But sometimes what was important in tasting tea was not the tea, but the mood and atmosphere. It was clear that this person was enjoying the atmosphere, so he naturally ignored the quality of the tea leaves. When dealing with smart people, there was no need for unnecessary words. Yang Qindong didn't bother with any boring opening remarks, getting straight to the point. Eunuch Wang, many thanks for your kind words just now. This is a small token of my appreciation. As he spoke, a small box was pushed in front of Wang Zhen. Wang Zhen was indeed a smart person. He didn't even ask what it was. He reached out and opened it. Inside was a contract for 10% of the Immortal Abode shares. It was only 10%. Wang Zhen didn't object, nor did he agree. He just casually sized up Yang Qindong, clearly waiting for an explanation. Eunuch Wang, I won't hide it from you. The Immortal Abode's total investment is estimated to be no less than 300,000 taels, perhaps even more. Wang Zhen, who had always been calm and collected, was startled by his first sentence. His twitching eyebrows had already proven everything. It was just a restaurant. How could there be such a large investment? Wang Zhen clearly didn't believe it. However, he also knew that Yang Qindong was a smart person. He wouldn't lie to him about something like this. He could send people to investigate at any time. Was Yang Qindong a smart person? At the very least, today's events had proven that the other party was very smart. But he had still mentioned the number of people. Didn't that mean that there really was such a large investment? As Wang Zhen's expression changed again and again, Yang Qindong bitterly smiled and shook his head. There are some things that, even if I don't say, Eunuch Wang will be able to find out. So, allow me to make some moves first. The Immortal Abode is located on the busiest street between the Zhenyang Gate and the Great Ming Gate. Not only that, but I've also had people buy up the entire street, which has more than doubled in size. Just the main hall alone can accommodate more than 1,000 people eating together. Just the investment and purchase of the land alone cost quite a bit. I don't know how many days it will take to earn it back. Regarding this point, Wang Zhen expressed his agreement. As the Great Ming dynasty grew stronger and stronger, the direct result was that the price of land in the capital had skyrocketed. It was truly a yearly increase in price. This was also because the location was chosen to be between the outer city and the inner city. If it was all in the inner city, then just the investment of this piece of land, and such a large scale, would probably cost at least 100,000 taels of silver. Seeing Wang Zhen lightly nod, Yang Qindong smiled and continued, "Just now I was talking about the dining hall on the first floor that can accommodate 1,000 people at once. There are no less than 50 private rooms around it. There were even 100 private rooms and rooms upstairs. Just the renovation alone would cost at least 100,000 taels of silver. Oh, that's right. I forgot to tell Eunuch Wang that the renovation this time is different from the past. I've used transparent glass and new furniture from outside. These things are very expensive, and just transporting them will cost a lot." Transparent glass? Wang Zhen couldn't help but ask in shock. The image of a mirror flashed through his mind, and he excitedly asked, "Is Yang Shima talking about a mirror?" "No." Yang Qindong shook his head. "Mirrors can reflect images and clearly reflect people. Glass is transparent and doesn't have the function of a mirror. However, it does have the function of isolation and allows people to see clearly without hindrance." "Oh, I'm afraid I can't explain this point in a short time. When the renovation is done, Eunuch Wang will naturally be able to see it. However, it is true that this is a new thing. It's a pity that the capital is limited. Otherwise, I would really want to get more. That would be a good time to make a fortune." Speaking of this, Yang Qindong constantly smacked his lips with a look of regret. "Capital? How much do you need?" Hearing that it was a new thing that could make a lot of money, Wang Zhen's interest was piqued. If it could be as magical as a mirror, then it would definitely be a good business. The speed at which he could make money was unimaginable. He wanted to get a foot in. Who would complain that the money was too little? "Well, if you want to buy in bulk, you'll need at least 5 million taels. Of course, if you have more, that would be even better. That way, you'll be able to make even more money." Yang Qindong furrowed his brows, as if he had only come up with this conclusion after careful consideration. As soon as he heard that 5 million taels was barely enough, Wang Zhen immediately gave up on the idea of investing. What kind of joke was this? Not to mention whether or not he had the money on hand. Just the current Yang Qindong wasn't enough for him to feel at ease. If he suddenly handed over so much money to the other party, wouldn't all his years of hard work go to waste? When Yang Qindong saw that the other party wasn't moving, he didn't have any intention of persuading him further. Those who didn't know would naturally think that glass was very expensive. However, since the glass factory in Crimson City could already produce it in bulk, the cost of producing it was extremely low. It was just that outsiders didn't know much about it. After talking about the land and renovations, Yang Qindong continued, there will be a large performance stage in the center of the immortal abode. At that time, there will be storytelling, singing, and dancing performances, and I can guarantee that they will all be new songs. When the time comes, just imagine how grand it will be. It won't be an exaggeration to say that even a single ticket will be hard to come by. In addition, there will be unique delicacies. You've already tasted potatoes today. Just this one dish alone can be used to make almost 20 different dishes. If you add in other delicacies, I'm sure the taste will be enough to make one salivate. Of course, the cost of performing the songs and dancing won't be low either. A rough estimate puts it at several tens of thousands of taels of silver. In addition, there will be the Yang family's Beyond Heaven Trading Company next to the restaurant. They will sell many things that the great Ming dynasty doesn't have, so they'll need to invest first. Even if they don't buy a lot of goods, the cost will still be no less than 100,000 taels of silver. All in all, 300,000 taels of silver is still barely enough. Furthermore, Eunuch Wang doesn't need to take out anything. Chapter 58. After saying this, Yang Qindong took a sip from his teacup. His lips trembled a few times, giving off the impression that he was extremely distressed. If there really was an investment of 300,000 taels, giving away 10% of the profits for free was truly not a small sum. Roughly estimating, he would receive at least 3,000 taels of silver every month. This allowed Wang Zhen to understand Yang Qindong's boldness. Then what do you need this eunuch to do? Wang Zhen didn't believe that a free lunch would fall from the heavens. If there were no benefits for the other party, even if it was a temporary alliance, it wouldn't last long. Eunuch Wang is straightforward. What I need is safety. I need Eunuch Wang to ensure that the Immortal Abode and World Heaven Trading Company are absolutely safe. At the very least, no one can cause trouble here. In addition, the bulk of the goods are coming from the barbarians, and I have already ordered them to be shipped to the nearest Tientsin Guard. This way, the journey from there to the capital will be safe. I hope that Eunuch Wang can guarantee it. Of course, the brothers will also pay for the tea. Yang Qindong was waiting for Wang Zhen to ask him this question. One had to get something in return. This was just a transaction. With Yang Qindong's current strength, once he revealed his fangs, it wouldn't be difficult to ensure his safety. However, these were his private soldiers, and he couldn't reveal them to others, at least not yet. Wang Zhen listened to Yang Qindong's request and pondered for a moment. He felt that this was not a difficult matter. He only needed to inform the Eastern Faction Guards and the Brocade Guards so that no one would cause trouble. This way, he would be able to earn at least 3,000 taels of silver a month, which would be 30 to 40,000 taels of silver a year. No matter how he looked at it, it was worth it. Okay, it's a deal. Eunuch Wang is straightforward. Come, this lowly official will use tea in place of wine to toast you. Yang Qindong laughed in satisfaction. How good. Wang Zhen seemed to be in a good mood. In his eyes, Yang Qindong was a god of wealth. Being on good terms with him was a matter of mutual benefit, so he was naturally happy. And from start to finish, Yang Qindong didn't show any intention of raising his rank. He just acted like a merchant, and this made Wang Zhen feel even more at ease. Wang Zhen liked power and money. But of course, the thing he loved the most was still power. In this aspect, Yang Qindong did not have the slightest intention to compete with him. There were only benefits and no disputes, so Wang Zhen could naturally rest assured. Satisfied, Wang Zhen left. Yang Qindong looked at Xiao Yin, who came to clean up the table, and said, Go! Throw away that set of teacups. Pointing at the teacups that Wang Zhen had used, the sixth young master's face was filled with disdain. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength was still too weak and he didn't want the people of the great Ming dynasty to suffer because of him, Yang Qindong wouldn't have done such a thing so casually. Yes, Xiao Yin replied obediently. Then she pursed her lips and smiled. Clearly, she found the sixth young master's pettiness funny. Oh, you've grown up. You actually dare to laugh at this young master. Since that's the case, are you ready to be spanked? He noticed Xiao Yin's gentle laughter. More importantly, she was laughing beautifully towards the end. Her entire body was trembling, causing her towering breasts to tremble as well. It was a powerful visual impact, and Yang Qindong couldn't help but feel his hands itch. He wanted to punish her using her parents. The so-called family law, which was what Yang Qindong said himself, was to spank her. Ever since he accidentally spanked Xiao Yin's, but while playing around, Yang Qindong liked the feeling of being fleshy. Xiao Yin didn't seem to be annoyed, and she even provoked the sixth young master for no reason. In this way, domestic discipline became popular. One was willing to be spanked, and the other was willing to be spanked. It was truly amusing. At this moment, Yang Qindong wanted to use domestic discipline again. To put it bluntly, it was because his hands itched. When she heard about domestic discipline, Xiao Yin's pretty face turned red. While she was delighted, she still said, "Young master, don't." Xiao Yin knows she was wrong. Do you know? It's too late now, ha ha ha. As he spoke, Yang Qindong walked closer with a big grin on his face, like a big bad wolf. Little White Rabbit didn't seem to have any intention of running away. Instead, she stood there foolishly, as if she was at his mercy. Her intention of asking for a spanking couldn't be more obvious. Yang Qindong knew that he could once again satisfy his touch, and a mischievous smile appeared on his face. However, all of this was lost as Tiger's mane suddenly appeared. Tiger's mane also knew that this wasn't the right time to appear, but he had no choice. Outside the Yang manor, the young master, the second young master, and the rest of the Yang family had all arrived. They wanted to see the sixth young master. These were all direct descendants of the Yang family. Tiger's mane didn't dare to stop them. What's wrong? Seeing Tiger's mane appear, Yang Qindong immediately regained his calm expression. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he looked like a completely different person from when he was fooling around with Xiao Yin. Young master, the second young master, and the other young masters and young miss have all arrived. They are currently outside the manor. The people from the East Faction Guards have stopped them. Tiger's mane lowered his head. As Yang Qindong's radiance grew brighter and brighter, his respect and reverence for the sixth young master grew with each passing day. Tiger's mane no longer spoke as casually as before. Big Brother and the others are finally willing to come? Yang Qindong let out a light snort. They were all blood-related brothers, and they were all snobbish. Yesterday he was only a 9th rank official, and they all said that they were too busy to show up. Now that he was a 5th rank official, he was even higher than them. They immediately came over. This was the reality of society. Although he was somewhat displeased, Yang Qindong still decided to meet them. After all, they were still his family. Since he had taken over Yang Qindong's body, he naturally wanted to return some benefits. This way, he would be able to face the world calmly after 100 years. All right, tell the people from the East Faction Guards that this is the young master's elder brother and elder sister. They are not to stop them. Yes. Tiger's mane respectfully replied and turned to leave. Xiao Yin immediately went to the main hall and began to clean up the tables and chairs. Outside the Yang family manor, Yang Gong, Yang Rang, Yang Shi, Yang Yang, Yang Guifang, and the 5 brothers of the Yang family had all arrived. Standing at the side were 3rd sister Yang Jing, 4th sister Yang Mei, 5th sister Yang Li, and 6th sister Yang Qin. Aside from eldest sister Yang Fei and 7th sister Yang Duo, all of his family members were present. At this moment, everyone was standing outside the Yang manor. Seeing the people from the East Faction Guards blocking their way, they did not dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. They only glanced at the manor from time to time, expressing their eagerness to see 6th brother. Finally, amidst their anticipation, Tiger's mane, dressed as a study companion, appeared. As soon as he approached, he said to the head of the East Faction Guards in charge of security, "These are the 6th young master's elder brother and elder sister. Please let them in." With the Yang Manor's permission, the East faction guards let them in. Only then did Yang Gong and the others have the opportunity to enter the manor. Once they were free from the East faction guard surveillance, the Yang brothers' expressions became somewhat arrogant, especially second brother Yang Rang. He said with an unhappy expression, "You must be Tiger's mane. What is little sixth brother busy with? We are all here. Does he not know how to come out and welcome us? Why did he send a servant like you?" As the head of the Ministry of Rights and a sixth-rank official, Yang Rang's authority was growing by the day. When he met Yang Gong, it was inevitable that he would argue with him, let alone a servant like Tiger's mane. Tiger's mane did not say anything. In his eyes there was only one master, and that was Yang Qindong, the sixth young master. As for the others, he would not pay attention to them. He did not interact much with them to avoid unnecessary suspicion. After complaining, he did not receive any response. At this moment, he just happened to walk to the front of the Yang Manor's main entrance. Yang Rang felt a little embarrassed and said somewhat angrily, "Tiger's mane, this official is talking to you. Do you hear me? You don't have any manners. Just stand there. You can leave when you know you're wrong." In his anger, Yang Rang treated this place as his own home. He scolded Tiger's mane and the others without any psychological pressure. Tiger's mane's footsteps became hesitant after being scolded like this. Then he remembered that Yang Rang was the second brother of the sixth young master. In the end, he stopped in his tracks and stood there without moving. He really looked like he was going to admit his mistake. The people guarding the main entrance of the Yang Manor were Yang Wu and Yang Lu. When they saw Tiger's mane being stopped, the two of them looked at each other. Then Yang Wu quietly disappeared, leaving Yang Lu standing there alone to keep watch. Second brother, sixth brother has been busy all day and is very tired. Besides, we are family. It is understandable that he did not come out to welcome us. There is no need to be so serious. Sixth sister, Yang Qin, who had always been disliked by others, saw that Yang Rang was taking advantage of the situation again. She immediately spoke with displeasure. "What? You say that I am serious? Sixth sister, who do you think you are? You are the only one in our family who married a businessman. Do you know how much face you have brought to our ancestors? Now, you still have the face to speak here?" Yang Rang was well educated and worked in the Ministry of Rights. His language skills were not to be underestimated. With just one sentence, he forced Yang Qin to be at a loss. Then, tears formed in her eyes and she looked like she was about to cry. "Second brother, we are all family. Why do you have to speak to sixth sister like this?" Eldest brother, Yang Gong, could not stand it anymore and wanted to mediate. "Eldest brother, it is not that I want to criticize you, but your temper is too good. That is why our Yang family is not what it used to be. If you ask me, sometimes you have to take care of people. Otherwise, without rules, there will be no order or propriety. At that time, we will only be bullied." Yang Rang didn't care about his elder brother Yang Gong at all. In his eyes, his big brother was born well. He was the eldest son of the Yang family. That was why he was a sixth-rank official. If it was him, he would be at least a fifth-rank official. Well said. A voice suddenly sounded from within the manor. Yang Qindong, who was dressed in green, strode out. "Second brother is right. Without rules, there will be no order or decorum. Otherwise, we will only be bullied. But sixth brother wants to ask, previously when third sister, fourth sister, and seventh sister were bullied, dare I ask, what were you doing?" Chapter 59. It was a slap in the face. Yang Qindong had just stepped forward when he gave the men of the Yang family a slap in the face. His interrogative expression made the Yang brothers' faces turn red. The fourth brother, Yang, had his head lowered. Just yesterday, he was still doubting Yang Qindong for not being able to control seventh sister. But they had gone to beat Wang Go early in the morning, and had even given his outrageous mother, Lady Yen, a horsewhip. Yet nothing had happened to him until now. Yang Qindong had used his actions to show his determination to protect the rights of the Yang family. In contrast, as the fourth brother, not only did he not support him, he even doubted him. Now that he thought about it, it really made him blush with shame. Not only the fourth brother, but even the eldest brother, third brother, and fifth brother's faces were flushed red. They clearly knew that they were in the wrong in this matter and could not refute anything. However, only the second son, Yang Rang, said with an indifferent expression, "Lil Six, you're wrong. Married women are like spilled water. Since they're already married, they're no longer part of the Yang family. What does it have to do with us, whether their life is good or bad?" Nonsense. With a furious shout, Yang Qindong was really angry this time. His shout shocked the crowd. At the same time, they were also unable to comprehend his shout. Yang Qindong had become a county official at the age of 13 and was now personally bestowed the status of a high scholar by the emperor. How could someone with such a status speak such filthy words? All the brothers and sisters could not understand. Only Chiao Yin, Tiger's Mane, and the other Yang family servants had a matter-of-fact expression. Their master should be like this. When he should be rewarded, when he should be punished, when he should be happy, when he should be scolded, when he should be scolded, he should be scolded. The scene quieted down, but after 2 breaths of time, Yang Rang, whose face was already filled with anger, suddenly jumped up and roared at Yang Qindong. "Little Sixth, what did you just say? You dare to be so disrespectful to your second brother. Do you know that you should be beaten?" As he shouted, Yang Rang really rushed towards the place where Yang Qindong was standing. However, Tiger's Man, Yang Wu, and Yang Lu had already formed a human wall in front of Yang Rang, making it impossible for him to get close to the 6th young master. Unable to rush forward, Yang Rang could not vent the anger in his heart. Instead, he bared his fangs and brandished his claws at the 3 Yang family guards. In just a few moments, his clothes were torn open, making him look like a village woman throwing a tantrum in a fight. "Enough! The 3 of you step aside. I want to see how this young master's second brother will attack an official of the imperial court." "All right." Yang Qindong shouted angrily when he saw how flustered and exasperated second Yang was. What's more, he's a court official who's 1 level higher than him. Once an order was given, it had to be carried out. After Tiger's Man and the other 2 heard this, they dodged to the side. Yang Rang, who was not prepared at all, missed and fell to the ground with a thud, making intimate contact with the ground. The Yang family's sisters finally could not hold it in anymore and covered their mouths as they chuckled. After being laughed at, Yang Rang felt humiliated. He quickly got up and wanted to rush towards Yang Qindong. Yang Qindong had long seen through Yang Rang's appearance of strength. He sneered, "Come on, try and hit me. Let's see if the East faction guards outside will arrest you and send you to the imperial edict." Yang Rang, who was about to make a move, immediately collapsed like a deflated ball when he heard about the East faction guards and the imperial edict. He stood there, not knowing whether he should move or not. Okay, we're all brothers. It was just a joke. Let's forget about it." At this time, Yang Gong began to stand up and play the good guy again. Yang Gong's personality was like this. Even though he saw his second brother suffer, he was still very happy. However, he did not forget his father's words before his death, that the Yang family should be united. As the eldest brother, all he could do was follow his father's orders. Everyone was used to their eldest brother's living mud, so naturally they did not feel that there was anything wrong with his words. However, Yang Qindong was not used to it. He shook his head and said, "No, this young master is not joking. I'm asking you, 3rd sister, 4th sister, and 7th sister suffered in the in-laws' house. Why didn't you do anything about it? Is it really like what second brother said, that a married girl is like water that has been poured out? Is there really no need to ask about it? If that's the case, why do they still have the surname Yang? Is the affection that we grew up with gone? This is clearly a sign of cold-bloodedness and incompetence. If that's the case, now that we have separated from each other, there is no need for us to interact with each other or help each other. Yang Qindong took the opportunity to express his own opinion. If it was yesterday Yang Qindong dared to say this, his brothers would definitely have reprimanded him, saying that it was easy for him to speak while standing. However, after what happened in the Wang family this morning, no one dared to say this. They already knew that their sixth brother was a man of his words. In comparison, they were indeed much more incompetent. At this moment, all they could do was to lower their heads. Even the second brother, Yang Rang, calmed down a lot. He thought about how Yang Qindong beat up Wang Go in the morning. He thought about how this person was greatly favored by the emperor and was even a secondary class 5th rank official, 1 rank higher than him. He thought that the current little six could no longer be treated as a younger brother. No one spoke. Only third sister, Yang Jing, and fourth sister, Yang Mei, stood there crying quietly. Just before this morning, they were still living in their in-laws' house, where each day felt like a year. However, when Wang Go's matter came out, their situation changed, especially when their in-laws sent people to investigate. They learned that Wang Go and his mother, Madame Yen, were beaten because they were not good to Yang Qindong's seventh sister, Yang Duo. Instantly, they became concerned about their madams. When they learned that their madam wanted to go to the Yang family village to see their sixth brother, no one dared to stop her. They immediately agreed. This was the general trend. Yang Qindong beat Wang Go and his mother. Not only he did not receive any punishment from the emperor. On the contrary, he was promoted to the 7th level. None of the civil and military officials in the imperial court said anything bad about Yang Qindong. On the contrary, they took a lot of potatoes home. After receiving benefits, they said that Wang Go was too harsh on Yang Duo and deserved to be beaten. Once these rumors spread, who would dare to be dissatisfied with the Yang family, not to mention deliberately causing trouble? It was already good enough that no one came looking for trouble. As a result, third sister, Yang Jing, and fourth sister, Yang Mei, finally had the chance to leave their in-laws' house and come to the Yang family village to meet with their brothers and sisters. And all of this was thanks to their sixth brother, Yang Qindong, who had just come to the capital. If not for him, who knew what kind of suffering they would have had to endure? Yang Qindong couldn't bear to see his two sisters crying, so he signaled to Qiaoyin with his eyes. Qiaoyin immediately walked over and helped third sister and fourth sister into the central room with fifth sister, sixth sister, Yang Qin. After the 4 sisters entered the central room, Yang Qindong looked at his 5 brothers and said, "Let's go. If there's anything you want to say, we can talk inside." Turning around, Yang Qindong led the way in. Behind him was eldest brother, Yang Gong, and the others. Last was second brother, Yang Rang, whose face was pale. Although he hated his sixth brother for not giving him face, he wanted to know what had happened in the Yang family village. As a 6th rank official, it was necessary for him to know what was going on in the court. In the central room, everyone was seated according to their size. But it was worth mentioning that the one sitting at the head was Yang Qindong, not eldest brother Yang Gong. It was true that this was the Yang family village, but it was built by Yang Qindong. He was the owner, so it was appropriate for him to sit at the head of the table. Everyone seemed to have some doubts about this, but because of Yang Qindong's display of strength, they tactfully didn't ask anything, but their gazes were clearly pressing. There were some things that Yang Qindong didn't want to be so clear about, but since his brothers had objections, he had to say them. "Brothers, there is one thing that 6th brother needs to clarify first. Although this Yang family village is called the Yang family village, it is different from the Yang family village in Jiangning Prefecture. That Yang family village is jointly owned by us brothers, but the one below us is 6th brothers. The Yang family village in the capital had 2,000 mu of fertile land, and it wasn't far from the capital, so its value could be imagined. Now that they heard that Yang Qindong had taken it for himself, the 5 brothers' expressions immediately changed. But before they could ask anything, Yang Qindong continued, Sixth brother knows what you brothers are thinking. But I must say that all of the investment in this Yang family village is sixth brother's alone, spending a total of 2,000 taels of gold. This is all for my partnership with cousin Yang Fu, the restaurant in Jianing Prefecture, and the newspaper Yangbao. Not only that, sixth brother will also be opening an Immortal Abode restaurant and a trading company in the capital. These two projects should cost at least 300,000 taels of silver. These matters have already been reported to His Majesty today, and eunuch Wang Zhen and cousin Yang Fu also have 10% of the shares. He wouldn't rest until his words shocked everyone to death. Yang Qindong laid out his plans for the future, since they were interested in a mere Yang family village. If he didn't make things clear beforehand, all sorts of trouble would come knocking on his door in the future. As for eunuch Wang Zhen's shares, they probably wouldn't dare to casually reveal such a big matter. Originally, when Yang Qindong said that the Yang manor had nothing to do with the brothers, they wanted to object. They also wanted to ask where the money to buy the manor came from if it had nothing to do with them. But when they heard that Yang Qindong had invested 300,000 taels in a restaurant and a trading company, they were so frightened that they didn't know what to say. If he could take out 300,000 taels of silver so easily, then this little Yang family village really didn't count for much. Not to mention, he had such a close relationship with Wang Zhen. From the looks of it, anyone who wanted to cause trouble for him was courting death. Yang Qindong saw the expressions on his brothers' faces change again and again, and he couldn't help but feel a wave of satisfaction in his heart. He had purposely brought up Wang Zhen's name in order to frighten them, and it seemed that it had been quite effective. Chapter 60. The central room fell into silence because of Yang Qindong's words. After a long while, Yang Gong, the eldest brother, asked in an uncertain tone, "Can Yang Bao and a restaurant really make that much money?" Yang Qindong obviously wouldn't say that most of the money was stolen by Gao Xiong and the others from the sea. Thus he could only nod. Every time Yang Bao publishes, the demand exceeds the supply. Naturally, it makes money. That's right, Wang Zhen also has 20% of the shares. Hearing that even Yang Bao had a share of Wang Zhen's shares, the brothers didn't ask any more questions. That was an existence they couldn't afford to offend. If they took a detour, they wouldn't be afraid of not being able to avoid it, not to mention taking the initiative to provoke it. Seeing that everyone was silent, Yang Qindong continued, "As for Jianing Mansion's Yang village, we'll still follow Mother's instructions when she left. The profits there will be divided into 6 parts, 1 for us 6 brothers. However, that village isn't very big, and the amount of money we can earn in a year is limited. It's not very possible to make a fortune from that. Since 6th brother already has the Yang village in the capital, we don't need the shares there. Let the 5 brothers divide it." Yang Qindong said magnanimously, "After deducting all kinds of expenses, the annual profit of the Yang family manor in Jianing Prefecture was only between 1,000 and 2,000 taels of silver. If the 5 brothers were to share it equally, each of them would only get 300 to 400 taels of silver. This amount of money was really not enough for him at the moment." After discussing the ownership of the village, Yang Qindong's gaze fell on the 4 sisters. "The Yang village in Jianing Mansion has nothing to do with you sisters. You rely on the dowry to survive in your in-laws' family. Without income, even a mountain of gold and silver will be emptied. This won't do." Shaking his head, Yang Qindong knew the importance of money. People said that money could make the devil push the millstone. There were even people who said that money could make the millstone push the devil. From this, it could be seen how important money was. The reason why the elder sister's status in their in-laws' family was declining day by day, other than the Yang family's weak power, it was also because they didn't have enough money. They were unable to establish their own power and consolidate their position. If he wanted to change it, it would be difficult to solve the problem by just beating him up. There might be a reason this time, but what about the next time? Yang Qindong couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be held accountable every time he hit someone. Therefore, he thought of a way to solve the problem once and for all, and that was to pay. With enough money to rely on, no one would dare to look down on them anymore. Third elder sister, fourth elder sister, fifth elder sister, and sixth elder sister. In the future, I'll give each of you a monthly allowance. I'll give each of you 1,000 taels of silver first. If you have any other urgent matters, feel free to tell me, and I'll find a way to solve it. Also, it's the same for eldest sister and seventh sister. You can help me inform them later. Yang Qindong looked at the four sisters with a smile. Of course, if you feel that your life isn't going your way and want to leave your current in-laws, you can also say so. If others don't want to make the decision, I'll make the decision. If others don't want to care, I'll care. If necessary, I can even ask His Majesty to make the decision for you. When the time comes and you're divorced, you can find another one that suits your heart. It's not easy to find a three-legged toad, but there are plenty of two-legged men. Yang Qindong habitually said some of the language of the later generations. When he said this, the girls immediately burst into laughter. Then third elder sister, Yang Jing, who wasn't living well, pursed her lips and said, "Sixth younger brother is joking again. Third elder sister is now over 30 years old and has 2 children. How can she divorce and get married? There's nothing impossible about it. Everyone has the right to pursue their own happiness. There are men, there are women. In short, if you're not satisfied with your life, you can come find me. I'll make the decision for you." Yang Qindong shook his head. He really wanted to refute his third elder sister's way of thinking. He wanted to say that in his era, there were many women in their 40s and 50s who divorced. But in the end, he didn't say it. After all, it was better to tear down 10 temples than to tear down a single marriage. This was a way of thinking that had existed since ancient times and couldn't be changed in a short period of time. When he said this, his 4 sisters, including Qiao Yin, couldn't help but shed tears. In this era, it really wasn't easy to find a man who understood women so well, especially Qiao Yin, who was proud of being able to follow by the 6th young master's side. The 4 sisters were very happy. They could get a monthly allowance of 1,000 taels of silver. With this money, they could do whatever they wanted in their in-laws' house. It was all their own money, so they could use it to uphold justice. They could also use it to rope in more people. Presumably, their future days would be filled with anticipation. In contrast, the 5 brothers' expressions were much more unsightly. How did this sound like something their 6th younger brother would say? Yang Qindong was clearly the eldest brother. Not only did he sound like the eldest brother, but Yang Qindong was also very strong-willed. When it came to money, the 5 of them added together couldn't even compare to his pinky finger. Ever since their parents passed away, their source of income had practically been cut off. Apart from a few hundred taels of silver from the Yang clan manor in the Yang clan's old residence, the rest was their official salary. Of course, it wasn't a problem for a small family to have that money. But for the 5 brothers, which one of them didn't have a wife and concubines, there were dozens of people in the family, so how could they use the money? Comparing official positions? Yesterday, they could use this to suppress Yang Qindong. But now the other party was a minor 5th rank official, while the best among them was a major 6th rank official. They still couldn't suppress him. Like this, what else could they use to talk to their 6th younger brother? Unable to make sense of things, they immediately felt bored and uninterested. Take second brother Yang Rang, for example. At this moment, he wanted to get up and leave. But if not for the fact that he still hadn't figured out the reason for the change in the Yang clan manor and why there were so many East faction guards outside, he would have already gotten up and left. Little 6th younger brother, what's going on today? Even the emperor came to the Yang clan manor, and so many civil and military officials? Yang Rang saw that if he didn't ask, Yang Qindong wouldn't tell him. So he couldn't help but ask. Nothing big. This wasn't a secret, and he believed that it would soon spread to all the streets of the capital. Since that was the case, it didn't matter to tell his brothers. Immediately, Yang Qindong roughly told them the whole story. When he said that the potatoes they planted could produce more than 20 dan per mu, the 5 brothers were shocked again. At this moment, they finally understood why their 6th younger brother suddenly turned over a new leaf. He was promoted and had nothing to do with an official position. They finally understood what was going on. Yang Rang felt that there was no need to stay. Why did he feel that staying would be a slap in the face? So he got up and said goodbye. When Yang Rang said that he wanted to leave, eldest brother Yang Gong also said that, followed by 3rd brother, 4th brother, and 5th brother. They knew that their words today had hurt their brothers. If they stayed now, their faces would only be ugly. Since that was the case, it was better to go their separate ways first. They could slowly make up for it in the future. All right, before you leave, each of you can bring back 10 jin of potatoes to try. I'm already in the capital, and there will be many opportunities for us to get along in the future. This time won't make a difference. Right, 4th brother, stay. I have something to discuss with you. Being called out, 4th brother Yang was stunned at first. Then he said happily, okay, I don't have anything to do when I go back, so I'll stay here and disturb 6th brother. The other eldest brother, 2nd brother, 3rd brother, and 5th brother looked at 4th brother Yang enviously. Then, led by Tiger's Mane and the others, they took the potatoes and left the manor. 4th brother Yang asked excitedly and curiously, 6th brother, why are you looking for 4th brother? It's like this. After dinner tonight, take me to the red light district in the capital to take a look. Yang Qindong said casually. The red light district. It referred to the red light district. It was usually a place where people sought pleasure. In other words, it was a brothel. Of course, there were also high-class places in the red light district. Those places sold their skills and not their bodies. They were specially provided for talented women to live there. For example, Chun Yuan in the late Ming dynasty was a courtesan. She was once a courtesan. The reason why he kept 4th brother was because he knew that this brother of his was a hedonistic son. He was an official and did not have a proper job. Furthermore, he was a man in the prime of his life. He should be familiar with such places. As expected, when 4th brother Yang heard that he wanted to take a look at the red light district, he immediately revealed an understanding look. Then he smiled slyly, that's right. 6th brother is already 18 years old. You're probably still a virgin. You should go and take a look. Yang Qindong did not know what to say to 4th brother's explicit words. He could only shake his head and ignore him. Instead, he ran over to talk to his sisters. The 4 sisters had also heard the conversation between Yang Qindong and 4th brother Yang. When they saw the 6th young master running over, they naturally smiled. Qiao Yin stood to the side with a face full of resentment. She seemed to be saying that if the young master needed anything, he should have just come to her. Why did he have to go to such a place? That would not have a good reputation. Looking at everyone's eyes, he knew that they had misunderstood him. Yang Qindong had no choice but to spread out his hands and explain, Sisters, 6th brother is not that bad. This time I have a purpose. You know that I want to build a restaurant. How can a big restaurant not have singing and dancing? I'm going to look for talents. So it's like that, Yang Qindong said with a deadpan expression. Putting aside whether or not the sisters really believed him, Qiao Yin was the first to believe him. Qiao Yin was the first person to believe him, because if the young master really needed help, he would definitely look for her and not go to the red light district to cause trouble. After explaining, Yang Qindong did not mention this matter again. Instead, he asked the sisters about some anecdotes in the capital. Because Yang Qindong had helped them vent their anger and even gave them money, the 4 elder sisters felt that their relationship with each other had become closer in an instant. This time, there was really nothing that they didn't talk about. As their relationship grew closer, Yang Qindong suddenly had an idea. He had Qiao Yin go to the warehouse in the rear courtyard and take out some women's bras, panties, and kipeos for the sisters to change into. Chapter 61. During the Ming Dynasty, the ancient customs were not extremely strict. At least they did not issue a no-exposure order like the Tang Zone. They also liked to wear skirts, and there were many patterns, such as the moonlight skirt, phoenix tail skirt, acacia skirt, and pleated skirt made of whole satin. This kind of skirt was flat in the front and had decorative lace around it. The inside was filled with colorful embroidery patterns, and the left and right sides had fine pleats. The most was 150 to 160 pleats. However, they were still not used to clothes like the qipao that exposed the calves. Compared to the thin, revealing skin of modern women, it was impossible to catch up. For this reason, Yang Qindong could be said to have persuaded a lot. It was like a woman's beauty was for others to see. Women were magical creatures in the hands of the Creator, and beauty was their nature. Since that was the case, why not find a way to show it? Wrap it up every day and admire yourself? A woman's true youth was only so many years, and it would pass in a blink of an eye. If they did not cherish it, they would be letting themselves down. Moreover, such a qipao could show a woman's perfect figure. Women who wore qipao generally had to be dignified. They had to stand straight, stick out their chest, and tuck in their stomach. They had to walk steadily, as if they were strolling in the courtyard. When they sat, they had to be upright and not hunched. After a long time, they would all become young ladies of noble families. The advantage was that it could also improve one's personality. Wearing an elegant and beautiful qipao, a woman's heart would be affected, and she would become more demure, elegant, and feminine. Women who were in a hurry or who did not stand properly with four legs were not suitable to wear a qipao. Wearing a qipao could also show that they had good nutrition. This was because women who wore qipao needed to have lustrous skin, white with rosy skin, a voluptuous and graceful figure, and delicate skin. Wearing a qipao like this, the clothes fit perfectly and were flawless. If one was sallow and skinny, they would not be able to wear a qipao no matter how good it was. At the same time, the rate of turning heads was high. A gentleman was used for those who understood him, and a woman was dressed up for those who liked her. Wearing a qipao would naturally attract countless eyes of the opposite sex. Who knew? It might even be a marriage decision. In short, the qipao was the clothes that could show the curvaceous beauty of Eastern women. After saying so much, the four sisters were somewhat moved, but no one tried it first. In the end, Yang Qindong had no choice but to use his trump card. She said that this was a tool to make money, and in the end, it would be paraded throughout the capital. If the four big sisters refused to wear it, how would others know of its benefits? If they couldn't sell it, wouldn't they suffer a loss? How would they be able to pay their monthly allowance? Of course, Yang Hodong just wanted to use this opportunity to help his four sisters regain their confidence. If he really wanted to promote it, he could get other open-minded women to wear it. It wouldn't be difficult to get a model team. That way, the effect would be better. Not to mention, once the immortal abode caught fire, the qipao would catch fire as well. He was extremely confident about this. Sure enough, when it came to money, the four sisters finally made up their minds. Sixth brother had helped them so much. If he was not even willing to pay this small price, it would be too unreasonable. Thus, the four sisters, including Xiao Yin, entered the fitting room with red faces and changed into qipaos. Yang Qindong and fourth brother Yang sat in the main hall, sipping tea as they waited to be the first audience. After the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn, the 5 women finally appeared in the main hall. When they walked out, because it was their first time wearing it, they were naturally a little embarrassed, even a little bashful. However, they didn't know that this made them look even more charming. At least, that was how Yang Qindong saw it. Yang, on the other hand, was staring at them with wide eyes, saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. It was hard to tell if it was tea leaves or something else. In any case, after the 5 women changed into qipaos, their auras completely changed. They gave off a completely different feeling, as if they were fairies that had descended to the mortal world. 6, brother. There should be more of these things, right? Give me a few. I'll have your sisters-in-law wear them when we get home. They'll definitely be beautiful. Yang, who reacted, didn't bother to wipe the saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. He grabbed Yang Qindong's arm and said anxiously. Yang Qindong, who was being grabbed, hurriedly nodded. Okay, I'll give one to each sister-in-law as a greeting gift. Only then did Yang stop, satisfied. The 4 sisters also had a shy look on their faces. When they wore the kipeos, it gave them a feeling as if they had returned to their youth, so beautiful and bright. Of course, whether or not they had truly returned to their youth was another matter. At least in terms of mentality, they had returned to their youth. For a moment, the 5 women were unwilling to take off their kipeos. Moreover, their faces were bright and full of smiles. It was unknown how long it had been since such a smile had appeared on their faces. Like the 4 sisters, Huyen also had a smile on her face. Grandfather and father returned to the mansion at noon and were all smiling. Then the housekeeper came to inform them that the whole family was having a meal tonight, a meal gathering. This kind of thing was common in large clans, but there were basically rules and regulations. For example, it would only appear during major festivals and happy events such as the New Year. But today was not the New Year, nor was it a festival, but they were having a meal together. This could only mean one thing, that something good had happened. Curiosity was human nature, especially for women. Huyen asked little Qing to inquire about it and gave half a tael of silver. The same was true for large families. If they wanted to win people's hearts and make more people like you until they were used by you, they had to give benefits. The servants had to live, and they had to live. How could they do without money? With half a tael of silver, he quickly found out the whole story from one of Hu Zhongning's personal attendants. It turned out that what Hu Zhongning did today made the emperor happy, and he was rewarded with a spring-embroidered saber. This saber was not an imperial sword, but it still showed how much the emperor valued Hu Zhongning. With a good impression, it would be natural for Hu Zhongning to be promoted in the future. And the reason for the saber was naturally related to Yang Qindong. When the maid Little Qing said that it was all because the 6th young master of the Yang clan had sounded the drum, Miss Huyen realized that the talent she had been hiding in her heart had actually arrived in the capital. Most importantly, Little Qing also found out that it was the 6th young master who had presented the auspicious item today. It was actually a grain that could produce more than 20 dan of grain per mu. This could solve the problem of the common people's stomachs. On the spot, he was conferred the title of the Crown Prince's Chamberlain, a minor 5th rank official. Miss, the 6th young master of the Yang clan, is only 18 years old, but he is already a minor 5th rank official. This kind of thing seems to only happen during the founding of the country. TSK, this 6th young master is truly formidable. Little Qing really wants to meet this person. Seeing the infatuated look on Little Qing's face, Huyen pursed her lips and smiled. What's wrong? Is Little Qing in love again? Then, do you want me to be your matchmaker and talk to him? She originally wanted to tease Little Qing, but who would have thought that Little Qing would agree without blushing? Okay, Little Qing will be the matchmaker. When the time comes, Little Qing will be able to marry you. Ah, what? How could Huyen be willing to let the matter go when she heard that the topic had turned to her? The 2 of them immediately broke out into laughter. After a while, when the 2 of them had enough fun, Little Qing caught her breath and said, Miss, you don't know? This 6th young master is not only talented, but also sincere. What do you mean, sincere? You haven't even met him. So how can you come to such a conclusion? Huyen shook her head in disbelief. She only thought that Little Qing thought that everything about Yang Qindong was good because of her admiration. But the facts proved that there were many people fishing for fame. Often, the people on the street would say how good the person was, but only when they really came into contact with the person would they know that the person was nothing more than a beast in human clothing. The good points were deliberately shown and could not stand the test of time. No, miss. Is this sixth young master's true temperament? You don't know, but just this morning he went to the vicinity of Lulikang and beat up his seventh brother-in-law. Little Ching remembered that when she heard the attendant talk about this matter, she couldn't help but have a happy expression on her face. In her mind, she imagined what kind of demeanor Yang Qindong would have when doing these things. Hu Yan originally thought that little Ching was doing it because of her admiration. When she heard the story, she immediately asked, "Wait, you said that the sixth young master beat up his seventh brother-in-law. What happened?" "I heard about this from master's personal attendant. It's like this." Little Ching then told Hu Yan everything she knew. When she heard it, Hu Yan's eyes were filled with anger. Then, her worry turned into joy. She even waved her arm and said, "Good, that's a good beating. A man who treats his wife badly deserves to be beaten." "Oh, right, that Wang Go is an official in the Hanlin Academy. Will it be okay to beat him up like this?" No. This is where the sixth young master is smart. He actually said that it was because he wanted to tell the emperor about Potato's good fortune, but he had no way. Unfortunately, he came to the Wang residence. He thought that since it was his seventh brother-in-law, he should have a way. Who knew that he would hit someone by accident? When little Ching said this, she giggled. In her heart, she praised the sixth young master's ability to change the situation was really amazing. There is such a thing. After hearing it, Hu Yan was also happy. Then she said happily, "Good, it's really good that you don't have to be sued after beating up such a bastard." At this moment, Hu Yan was obviously standing with Yang Qindong. When you truly love someone, everything that person does is right. But very quickly, she became unhappy again. Little Ching, who still had a dreamy look on her face, suddenly saw the change in Miss's expression and couldn't help but worry. Miss, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell somewhere?" As she spoke, she even reached out to touch Hu Yan's forehead. Chapter 62. No. Hu Yan shook her head and dodged the jade pendant. She rested her chin on her hands and said bitterly, "Little Ching, do you think that when a woman marries into her husband's family, she really has to resign herself to her fate? Think about how lively the Yang family's seventh young miss used to be. She was also doted on by everyone in her family, but after marrying into the Wang family, she actually has to work as a maid and servant. She can't even do anything about it. It's really too hard." Knowing what little Ching was worried about, little Ching quickly shook her head and said, "That won't happen. If young miss gets married, won't master and lord stand up for you? No one will bully you." "No." Hu Yan shook her head stubbornly. The Yang family's seventh young miss's identity is also not simple. Her father is Lord Yang Rong, who is not inferior to my grandfather at all. In fact, he is even stronger. But doesn't she still have to suffer? Sigh, little Ching, I suddenly don't want to get married. Hearing Hu Yan's words, Xiao Qing didn't know how to persuade her. She sat down with her hands on her cheeks and looked out the window. Women are destined to marry, and they have to give birth to children for those men. This is our fate. But life is also divided into good and bad. If you really marry someone like Wang Go, then wouldn't your life be ruined? Wouldn't it be better not to marry and be a young lady for the rest of your life? Hu Yan shook her head. This matter had a great impact on her heart. It actually gave birth to a kind of premarital phobia that modern people had. Seeing that Hu Yan was really disheartened, little Qing was afraid. If that was really the case, then Master and Lord would definitely punish her. What should she do then? Thinking of this, she was also a little terrified. But then a person's name jumped into her mind. Young miss, you can marry the Yang family's young master. You see, for his sister's matter, he did not hesitate to break the law and beat someone to seek justice. This kind of man should be trustworthy. Marry the Yang family's sixth young master? Is he really worth entrusting your life to? At this moment, Hu Yan began to seriously consider this question. Red Light Street. It was located in the outer city of the capital, near the Chongwen Gate. At night, this place was brightly lit, and countless high officials and wealthy merchants could be seen here. The Ming dynasty had rules that forbade civil and military officials from sleeping at night or going to prostitutes. Every official who slept in a brothel would be flogged 60 times. The matchmaker would be reduced by 1 level, which meant that he would have to be flogged 60 times. Even the person who introduced him would have to be flogged. The sons and grandsons of officials were also punished with 60 strokes of the plank. There was once a commander of Guangdong's Hainan Guard who came to the capital to stay there and prostitute. Shiju, Bengshi Weiyu on guard. It meant that the people with military positions were not allowed to sleep, prostitute, or marry the musicians of the musical house. Otherwise, they would be transferred to other guard stations. However, even if it was a punishment, he would still receive his salary. There was a song about a woman who did not know the sorrow of her country's destruction. She sang the flowers of the backyard across the river. Du Mu's 2 lines of poetry nailed the singers, including the prostitutes, onto the pillar of shame, as if they were born cheap. However, this was just a theory of femme fatale. Who did Shang Nu sing for? Wasn't it all for the meat-eaters who shouldered the rise and fall of the country? If there wasn't anything they wanted to hear, would the singers be so bored as to sing to the water, sing to the trees, sing to the wind? To put it bluntly, these poor women were just scapegoats for the incapable and unprincipled men. In this regard, Yang Qindong's view was indeed different from other people's. In his view, existence was reasonable. Just like prostitutes, they had never stopped since ancient times. Just like when the Republic was first established, they disappeared under a serious blow. But didn't they reappear as soon as the economy developed? This was originally a demand. Since there was a demand, there should be a response. As long as it was used well, it could also reduce some crimes. Of course, it should be regulated, such as paying taxes, having regular physical examinations to ensure safety, and so on. Of course, with Yang Qindong's current status, it was impossible for him to bring up these things. That would be looking for trouble. The red light district was different from the ordinary willow alleys. The legal control here was much weaker. Most of the people here had skills, and most of them sold their skills instead of their bodies. Unless they really liked each other, it was another matter. Because of this, there was no need to be so afraid of officials appearing here. Tonight, Yang Qindong came here with the mentality of looking around and at the same time looking for talents. As the saying goes, every profession has its own master. What did this master refer to? Of course, it was talent. Just like those female celebrities in the future. There are good ones and clean ones. But what kind of state most of them were in, only they themselves knew. In fact, deep down, they didn't want to become that kind of person. But in the big picture, what could they do? If they weren't taken, there was no show to take. In this way, everyone else was popular like this, and the successors didn't matter. But it was undeniable that no matter how they became popular, they had a certain level of ability and could be considered talents. On the way here from the Yang family village, Yang Qindong had already heard from his 4th brother that there were 2 very famous courtesans in the red light district. They were famous for their skills and were the guests of many distinguished people. Most importantly, they really sold their skills instead of their bodies. To be able to persist in this kind of environment made Yang Qindong admire them very much. The first place he came today was called Jiu Yifang. As everyone knew, the ancients said that there were 6 arts: etiquette, music, archery, imperial, calligraphy, and mathematics. It was rumored that the courtesan, Lady Xiang, had 9 arts, especially dancing. Her figure had made many men forget to go home and forget to eat. Just like what his 4th brother said, Lady Xiang was born with a strange fragrance that made people intoxicated. Just by getting close to her, it could make people's thoughts run wild. It was indescribably beautiful. Regarding this, Yang Qindong believed. In the future, he would often hear people saying that a certain person had a body fragrance. This wasn't surprising. It was just that her sweat had a special smell that made people smell fragrant. Even though he had heard of it, he had been busy completing all kinds of missions back then and had never come into contact with such a woman. Now that he had the opportunity, he wanted to experience it. Yang Yang was originally a profligate son. Naturally, he would come to places like Ju Yifang often. However, because he didn't have a lot of money, he didn't feel satisfied every time he spent there. Thus, he didn't leave a deep impression on others. Now that his sixth brother was paying by his side, Yang Yang's face was filled with excitement. Tonight, it was time for him to show off. It was also time for him to spend lavishly. The carriage arrived at the entrance of Jiu Yifang. After the carriage stopped, Yang Yang excitedly lifted the curtains and went out. Taking this opportunity, Yang Qindong noticed that the entrance of Jiu Yifang was close to 3 zhang wide. It showed how deep the foundation of this place was. At that time, how was a person's ability? It could be seen from the width of the entrance. This was the first impression that Yang Qindong had. After alighting from the carriage, Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei were left behind. Yang San and Yang Si, who were driving the carriage, stayed behind to observe who was coming and going. With the help of his brothers, Yang Qindong, who was also wearing green clothes, walked into the main Jiu Yifang with a folding fan in his hand. As soon as they entered the gate, a manservant came to greet them and lead the way. After walking for another 20 steps, they arrived in front of a large courtyard that was 2 stories high. They hadn't even entered the courtyard yet. Before they even entered, they could already hear the chatter of orioles. "Oh, isn't this Master Yang Si?" A well-dressed woman in her 30s was welcoming guests at the door. When she saw Yang Yang, she recognized his identity at a glance. She immediately pretended to be surprised and shouted. Then a fragrance wafted into Yang Yang's nose, and she rushed over just like that. "Haha." When Yang Yang saw this scene, he first looked up to the sky and laughed. Then he naturally allowed the woman to rush in front of him and hold his arm. Casually, he put 5 taels of silver into the woman's wrist. Then he asked naturally, "Is Lady Xiang here?" Yang Yang had never been so generous in the past when he gave out 5 taels of silver. As a result, the woman in charge of welcoming the guests had a happy expression on her face. She said in a coquettish voice, "Fourth Master Yang's luck is good. Tonight, Lady Xiang will play a song. I'm afraid it will start soon." "Is that so?" "That's good. Just let someone lead the way." Yang Yang smiled and nodded. Then he touched the woman's chin and laughed loudly as he entered the courtyard. At this time, another maid came forward with a lantern and led Yang Si and the others into the courtyard. As Yang Qindong walked, he said to Yang Qindong, who was following beside him, "That was the receptionist just now. She is a female artist who is no longer popular. In fact, when they were young, they had some fame. However, now that they are old, they can no longer dance, sing, or play. Moreover, they were born lowly and had nowhere else to go. Thus, they decided to do this kind of business. Speaking of which, they are quite pitiful. Because of this, when the guests have the ability to take care of them, they will usually be given some silver." As if he was afraid that his 6th brother would blame him for giving out 5 taels of silver, Yang Yang explained, "It's fine. 4th brother can do as you see fit. The silver is not a problem." Yang Qindong smiled and shook his head. To him, 5 taels of silver was really nothing. If Gao Xiong and the others went out to rob, who knew how many 5 taels of silver would come into his account? Seeing Yang Qindong's indifferent expression, Yang Yang's heart was filled with confidence. He then said to the young girl who was leading the way, "This prince is not lacking in money. Find a good place. This is your reward." As he spoke, 2 taels of silver were handed over. "Thank you for the reward. This servant will lead you to the best place." Seeing how generous the reward was to her, the maidservant's face was filled with joy, and she became even more attentive as she led the way. The courtyard was brightly lit. Who knew how many candles and lanterns were lit? Just this alone would not be a small expense. Of course, the guests who could come here all had a small amount of money. They could casually give out enough to cover the expenses. Chapter 63. While he was still looking around, Yang Qindong was led to a square table. There were some fruits and tea placed on the table, and the location was close to the stage, where the performers were performing. Although it wasn't the closest, it was still not bad. Yang naturally sat down there, and then his gaze began to wander. He accidentally saw a few familiar faces and waved his hand to greet them. Seeing Yang's obviously flaunting expression, Yang Qindong helplessly shook his head. "Fourth brother, what are you doing?" Greeting acquaintances. "Sigh, sixth brother, you don't know, but I rarely get to sit in such a position. To be able to sit here. Just the table fee is 20 silver taels." Yang explained and said with some heartache. It seems to be worth it." Yang Qindong also looked around. Looking at the environment, he nodded with satisfaction. He began to compare it with his own renovation drawings, and whether there was anything that could be improved. Seeing that Yang Qindong didn't seem to feel any heartache, Yang relaxed. Although he was his own brother, he was still spending other people's money. It was impossible to say that he didn't feel guilty at all. He felt that he was putting on a show. In order to show that he was here, and mainly to not feel guilty in front of sixth brother, he carefully pointed at the two tables closer to the stage and said, "Sixth brother, do you see the people at those two tables?" Yang Qindong's gaze moved. In his line of sight, there were two young people in their 20s sitting at the two tables. They were dressed in brocade and satin and had arrogant expressions. It seemed that they didn't care about anything. Knowing that sixth brother was paying attention to them, he laughed and introduced them in a low voice. "The young master in the east who looks a bit older is Su Qingzong. The one in the west is Zhang De." "Oh." Yang Qindong raised his eyebrows. "Are they the descendants of the Duke of Wei and Duking?" Sixth brother is indeed knowledgeable. Su Qingzong was the eldest son of the current Duke of Wei, Su Qin. Now that his health wasn't too good, it was said that he would pass his title to this son. The one called Zhang De is only the second son of the Duke of Ing, Zhang Fu. I don't think he has a chance of inheriting the Duke's position. However, I heard that he has a good relationship with his eldest brother, Zhang Mao. I think he should be able to live a comfortable life. In order to please his sixth brother, or in order to have more money to spend, Yang poured out as much as he knew. Yang Qindong nodded as he listened. He knew both of them, and the Security Bureau had done a detailed investigation before. Duke of Wei Su Qin, grandson of the Prince of Zhongshan Suda. At that time, Suda was known as the #1 contributor to the founding of the great Ming dynasty. Naturally, his descendants enjoyed an extremely honorable status and glory. However, the later generations were still the later generations, and there weren't any truly capable people. In addition, the previous generations of emperors were worried that their achievements would shock the emperor, so they had always suppressed the use of them, making it even harder for them to achieve anything. At present, Su Qin's health wasn't good, and he was bettered in every day. As his eldest son, Su Qingzong, became more and more popular, and his status naturally rose along with it. As for the other person, Zhang De, he was the second son of the Duke of Ing, Zhang Fu. As mentioned before, Zhang Fu had performed many meritorious deeds and could be considered a famous general. However, with the eunuchs in power, he was severely suppressed. This matter was mentioned in the previous chapter. Regardless, with the protection of the Duke of Ing, he wasn't someone that just anyone could offend. For a mere 9 arts workshop to be able to attract the support of 2 dukes' descendants, it could be seen that this Lady Xiang had some ability. Yang Qindong couldn't help but look forward to it even more. Yang Qindong sat on the chair calmly and took a sip of tea from time to time. Yang Qindong was enjoying himself here. This was his first time in the capital, so he didn't know many people. This saved him the trouble of greeting and feigning civility. Time slowly passed, and the hall grew more and more lively. More and more people were led to the tables by the maids, and slowly the temperature in the hall began to rise. The odor of sweat began to fill the air, causing Yang Qindong to wrinkle his nose and shake his head. The ventilation here wasn't very good, so the odor couldn't quickly disperse. Just this point alone made it seem rather inferior. This wasn't like the immortal abode he was opening. Not only did it have transparent windows, it also had a layer of screen outside. In this way, it could ensure that the air was not only ventilated, but also that mosquitoes couldn't get in. This was a truly refreshing place. While they were waiting, or perhaps they were suffering, the number of seats in the hall had reached more than 70%. With a series of light footsteps, two young girls who could be considered decent walked onto the stage, each holding a pipa. Yang had been observing Yang Qindong this entire time, ready to give an explanation at a moment's notice. Seeing the two girls walk up, he leaned over and said, "Fourth brother, these two are here to warm up the scene. They aren't the main characters." Yang Qindong nodded. In his previous life, this was also how the theaters operated. The warm-up would appear first, and the main characters would only appear for the finale. With the appearance of the two warm-up girls, the hall became much quieter. The two girls bowed, and then the two girls holding the pipas slowly opened their cherry mouths and began to sing. Red dragonflies fly on the branches of the green poplar. When the spiders see him, they spread their webs, gazing at him with infatuation. Spiders, don't look at me. I advise you not to think too much about this trap. Even if you exhaust your mind, it's just that your webs won't catch up. The style of the song was very slow, and it often took half a day to sing a single line. It was very similar to the Kuan opera of his previous life. This was also a famous song with dragonflies at that time. Some people even nodded and shook their heads in appreciation, as if they were reciting the 4 books and 5 classics. But regardless of what others thought, Yang Qindong looked as if he was about to fall asleep. He was obviously used to the pop music of his previous life, and he really couldn't appreciate the song in front of him. The song lasted for nearly an hour. Under someone's praise, Yang Qindong, who was about to fall asleep, was awakened. When he raised his head, the two girls had already bowed and left. In their place was a beautiful woman in her 30s. From Yang Qindong's position, he could see a trace of melancholy in the corner of the woman's eyes. He guessed that it must be a kind of accumulation of life. It was impossible to say that she didn't have any grievances after spending so many years in the entertainment industry. On the contrary, all kinds of people had to be welcomed with a smile, and all kinds of people could make you unhappy. But since she was doing business, she could only welcome them with a smile. After a long time, this melancholy naturally merged with her soul. Fourth brother, this person is the head procuress here, Cui Na. She was very beautiful when she was young, and even now, there are many people pursuing her. But all this time, she has been clean and has never had an affair with any man. Later on, she was chosen by the owner to manage this 9 arts hall. Speaking of which, she's not an easy woman. Yang, who was at the side, had a chance to show off, so how could he be polite? He envied his elder sister and younger sister in his heart. They could actually get a monthly salary of 1,000 taels from his 6th brother, but as his brother, he didn't get anything. This made him feel that it was unfair, and at the same time he also had an idea. That was to curry favor with his 6th brother and get more money. At the very least, he had to get close to his elder sister and younger sister and get the money first. As for whether his 4th brother would be looked down upon by others if he tried to curry favor with his 6th brother, he didn't care. The world was big, but money was the biggest, wasn't it? Also, Cui Na has already come on stage, which means that Lady Xiang is about to come on stage. She came on stage to ask for a reward. This is also called asking for a reward. In a while, whoever gives more money may be favored by Lady Xiang. If the opportunity is good, it is also very possible to become a guest. Yang was still there chattering. At this time, there were already people throwing silver taels and copper coins on the stage. One thing to note here was that the great Ming dynasty didn't have banknotes, and even silver was very rare. The currency used by the Ming dynasty was the precious banknote at the beginning of the Ming dynasty. However, the precious banknote depreciated very quickly, so much so that it was like waste paper and no one was willing to use it. Private transactions mainly used copper coins and silver, but before the inflow of silver from overseas in the late Ming dynasty, the Ming dynasty silver stock was limited, and the imperial court prohibited the mining of silver, so the silver circulating in the market was not abundant. The time when the first banknote company appeared in China was about the first year of Daoguang in the Qing dynasty after 1820. This first banknote company was called Rixingchang, and it was from that time that banknotes appeared. Without banknotes, it also made it very inconvenient for people to trade when they went out. They often needed to bring a lot of silver or copper coins to trade. Just like now, people wanted to give a reward to attract the attention of Lady Xiang. For a time, silver tails filled the sky and flew onto the stage. Of course, only some small individual investors threw money on the stage. They gave too little, so they wanted to fish in troubled waters. They just wanted to prove that they were also generous people. Because they were embarrassed and had no money, they had this kind of method. For real rich people, there would be a pimp coming to the table with a plate to ask for money. Once he received the money, he would sing loudly to praise the noble status of the person who gave the money. Naturally, this kind of practice could also lead to a kind of competition mechanism, allowing more men to spend a lot of money here, so that they could have a better harvest. The pimp began to move, walking to the front of the table, and the silver tails on the copper plate began to gradually increase. Yang Hodong was watching this scene with interest. This was completely different from what he had imagined. So naturally he was a little curious. While watching and imagining what kind of mechanism would be used when his restaurant opened, suddenly he was awakened by a singing voice. "Thank you, young Master Wang, for the 50 taels of silver." Chapter 64. Following the voice, Yang Qindong turned his head and saw a seemingly elegant young man smiling as he placed 5 taels of silver on a copper plate. His gaze drifted around as if he was showing off his height, wealth, and handsomeness to others. Sixth brother, only those who tip over 50 taels of silver will be praised and remembered by Lady Xiang. How much should we tip? Noticing that Yang Qindong seemed to be moved, fourth brother Yang hurriedly added fuel to the fire. In any case, it was Yang Qindong's money. Even if he didn't tip Lady Xiang, he might not necessarily give it to him. Since that was the case, it was better to tip more. In that case, he would naturally be in the limelight. Oh, is there such a saying? Yang Qindong smiled when he heard this. Then he raised his index finger toward Tiger Mane, who was standing behind him. 100 taels? Sixth brother is bold. Yang thought that he understood. Looking at the gesture, he chuckled. Then he sat down and waited for the turtle slave to come to his table so that he could show off. The turtle slave shouted and sang. Then he handed the 10 taels of silver on the copper plate and some money from the other people to the little turtle slave behind him. Then he walked to another table. However, it seemed that his good luck had run out. Or perhaps most of the people who came today were embarrassed. In short, he didn't drink or sing. When he came to Yang Qindong's table, the turtle slave first lowered his head to show respect. Then his gaze landed on the table of the 2 high dukes' descendants not far away. To be able to be a turtle slave who came to collect money, he had to have some status. Moreover, he had to have good eyesight. What kind of person could tip how much money? He could naturally tell at a glance. In his eyes, this wasn't Yang's first time here. This was the first time he had sat in such a good position. However, he was afraid that this was the extent of his ability. Perhaps there would be some money, but it definitely wouldn't be too much. Otherwise, he would have sat in the main seat where the 2 high dukes were sitting. Yang already knew the result, so he had been waiting for the arrival of the pimp so that he could perform well. When he saw that the other party didn't even look at him, he couldn't help but sneer. Then he imitated Yang Qindong and nodded to Tiger's mane behind him and said, "Reward!" Tiger's mane wouldn't listen to Yang, even if it was his fourth young master. However, with Yang Qindong's previous order, when he heard the word reward, he obediently untied the bundle on his body, took out some silver, and placed it on the copper plate. Compared to young Master Wang's reward just now, the silver coins this time were all 20 taels per ingot. Once he placed the coins in his storage ring, he received 5 ingots in the blink of an eye. Yang looked like he was waiting for the tortoise slave to sing and drink. But who would have thought that Tiger's mane still had no intention of stopping? The silver ingot in his hand continued to smash down. 10 ingots, 20 ingots, 30 ingots, 40 ingots. Yang's expression changed greatly. This was far more than 100 taels of silver, but he still had no intention of stopping. This Tiger's mane couldn't be stupid, right? What was he doing? He wanted to say something to stop him, but he was worried that he would lose face. He could only look at his 6th brother, Yang Qindong, but he still couldn't understand, because his 6th brother's face was full of smiles, as if he didn't see the situation in front of him. He was still calm and unmoved. At this moment, the tortoise slave was also dumbfounded. He originally thought that the Yang family's 4th young master would at most tip 3 to 5 taels of silver, but who would have thought that the 4th young master would throw 20 taels of silver into the copper plate without even blinking an eye? The clanking sound of the silver ingot being thrown into the copper plate was incessant, to the point where he had to use both hands to support it, but he still couldn't support it. Fortunately, the little tortoise slave behind him had good eyesight and had already come to help. The 2 of them were barely able to support it with 4 hands. In the past, when someone tipped, the tortoise slave only felt happy and excited. According to the rules, he could also get a certain commission. In other words, the more he was tipped, the more he would get. Only today he felt the pressure. It was also the first time that he had the idea of quickly stopping the tipping because his hands really couldn't support it. Yang and the tortoise slave's expression had already changed. Not only that, but the faces of everyone in the hall who saw this scene changed. Even Cui Na, who was standing on the stage, had her face turned red. It was unknown whether it was fear, excitement, or excitement. This scene also shocked the others. After the 2 high dukes saw this, their expressions also changed. When they saw a large amount of silver appearing on the copper plate, they seriously looked at Yang Qindong and Yang Qindong, who was sitting beside him with an indifferent expression. What kind of person was Yang? They often met him here, so they naturally knew. He was just the 4th young master of the Yang family. It was impossible for him to have such financial resources. Of course, it wasn't that they looked down on Yang, because even if he had so much money, he wouldn't take it all out. He still had to live. Not to mention, even if he took out so much silver, he might not be able to get Lady Xiang's favor. One had to know that with this amount of silver in hand, who knew how many concubines he could marry? There were other people who were also shocked when they saw the scene. There was envy, jealousy, and hatred in their eyes. Just like young Master Wang, who had just tipped 50 taels, his face was originally full of arrogance, but now even his head was lowered. He only tipped 50 taels and was already so complacent. Compared to the Yang family's tipping, wasn't he too ignorant and stupid? Regardless of what other people thought, Tiger's mane followed Yang Qindong's orders and took out silver ingots one by one. Finally, after taking out a total of 1,000 taels, he stopped and then closed the huge bag on his body. 1,000 taels of silver was equivalent to 100 caddies, but the bag didn't seem to have decreased by much. People couldn't help but wonder how much silver was left in the bag. At the same time, they couldn't help but admire Tiger's mane strength. He didn't even bend over while carrying such a heavy bag. Looking at the two slaves who were already bent over by the weight of the 100 caddies of silver ingots, two more slaves came from afar to help. Only then did the leader find the time to sing, "Yangtze has a reward, 1,000 taels of silver." As soon as the singing came out, the whole audience suddenly became quiet, but then it became noisy. Some of the friends who had greeted Yang Yang before stood up from afar and cupped their fists to look at him. At this time, they were all proud to have made such a friend. Yang Yang, who had stolen the limelight, naturally also stood up and cupped his fists to salute everyone. His big mouth almost reached the back of his ears, and there was no need to mention how happy he was. This was definitely the day he was proudest of in his life. At this moment, he felt as if he had reached the peak of his life, and his status seemed to have been raised by a lot. But what he didn't know was that those who were smart didn't even look at him, but at Yang Qindong, who was sitting at the side. There were even smarter people who had already guessed the identity of this person. The tortoise lowered its head so low that it almost reached its waist. Then it bent its head and bowed. It wasn't that there were no people who had tipped 1,000 taels of silver in the past, but they could be counted with one hand. Moreover, the last time was a long time ago. At least, this was the first time he had been tipped as a slave. One could imagine how excited he was. When he thought of the commission he could get, he was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. Turtle's mane finally left and went to another table. But with Yang Yang, an unpolished jade, in front of everyone, it was naturally difficult for other people's rewards to enter the eyes of others. Even if Su Qingzong and Zhang De each tipped 100 taels of silver, why do they feel that the slaves were so weak when they were singing? After the tipping session, the head of the house, the brothel keeper Cui Na, bowed again and then slowly retreated. She was replaced by a young girl wearing a red muslin dress, who walked on the stage with 4 maids with the same appearance. It was Miss Yang. She didn't do anything, but as soon as she appeared, she immediately attracted the loud cheers of everyone in the hall. Yang Qindong looked up. She was wearing a rose-scented tight robe with sleeves and an emerald green skirt with scattered flowers. Her waist was tied into a big bow with golden silk soft smoke gauze. Her hair was hanging low and was inserted with a jasper phoenix hairpin. Her slender figure was seductive and charming. The first impression she gave to the 6th young master was that she was gorgeous. This kind of person was described by the phrase gorgeous and indescribable. She was very similar to the young Hong Kong actress Guan Jilin, who gave people a sense of seduction, eroticism, and temperament. When Yang Qindong looked at her, Miss Yang also looked at him. At that moment, their eyes met. At this moment, the 6th young master felt that his heart seemed to beat a few more times. 6th brother, she's looking at me. She's looking at me. This beautiful feeling was quickly disrupted by 4th brother Yang Qindong. He looked like a pig, and his saliva was about to flow out. He kept pulling Yang Qindong's sleeve and kept repeating it. Yang Qindong's thoughts instantly returned to normal. Then the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. He already knew that Miss Yang was powerful. She could easily seduce people's souls. Often, with just a look, she could make a man lose control of himself. As soon as Miss Yang appeared, the scene suddenly became a little crazy. Everyone's eyes were like a rain of arrows, flying directly toward the stage. Miss Yang seemed to be used to this. She still did her own thing. First, she bowed apologetically. Then, a wooden table and a guqin appeared in front of her. Her jade-white hands gently moved forward and landed on the strings of the guqin. Then, a soul-stirring sound of the guqin was heard. In an instant, the whole place quieted down. This was the strength of the courtesan queen. She could suppress the stage in an instant and play a role in suppressing the audience. Following which, her jade-like hands continued to stroke the guqin. Beautiful melodies echoed out and entered people's ears, causing them to feel relaxed and happy. Chapter 65. As her jade-like hands gently plucked the strings, Her slender fingers quickly played on the strings. The sound of the zither was sharp and high-spirited, but not abrupt. It was like countless fierce horses galloping fiercely. Yang Qindong was also moved by this beautiful music. At this moment, the sound of the zither in his ears was both high and low. It was deep, gentle, and passionate. Just as the sixth young master was immersed in it, the sound of the zither suddenly changed and turned into a charming tenderness. Lady Xiang finally opened her mouth and slowly said, "Make an appointment with your lover. Agree to finish the renovation of the peony platform and peony field when the flower blooms. Wait for the flower to germinate and deliver it. It's almost the Qingming festival, and the head of the flower is not growing. Thinking of last year's flower is about to bloom. Why is it so late this year?" This was a very famous song in the Ming dynasty, Blooming Flowers. It talked about the love between a man and a woman, and it was even very explicit. As the spectators who were extremely familiar with these songs, they naturally heard everything and nodded their heads incessantly. However, in Yang Qindong's ears, it really made him feel uncomfortable. In addition to the different appreciation of the world, Yang Qindong still thought that such a song was misleading the children by letting a beauty like Lady Xiang sing it. It was like a great singer who sang bel canto. If you made him sing a children's song, how could it give people a good feeling? Yang Qindong naturally shook his head in displeasure. Even Yang Yang, who was beside him, did not notice the scene. Perhaps he was immersed in the beautiful voice of his wife, but there was one person who saw it clearly. It was young Master Wang, who was not far from the table. Young Master Wang naturally had a name. Wang Si, also known as Yitzi, was an editor of the Hanlin Academy, a 7th grade official position. Of course, these were not important. He had a more important identity, which was the eldest grandson of Wang Ji, the minister of the Ministry of Personnel. His grandfather was the heavenly official of the Ministry of Personnel, so one could imagine how bright Wang Si's future would be. Just now, he had been humiliated by Yang Yang. Although he was not a vengeful person, it would be great if he had a chance to get back at Yang Yang. When he was listening to the music, just now, he inadvertently glanced at Yang Yang's table. After all, the limelight was taken away by this table. Coincidentally, he saw Yang Qindong shaking his head. He was very sure that this shaking of the head was not the same as the shaking of the head. It wasn't the kind of reaction where they would shake their heads in admiration. Instead, it was a reaction where they didn't understand, didn't agree, and didn't like it. This time, he thought he had found an opportunity. Ignoring Lady Xiang, who was still singing, he suddenly stood up from his seat, pointed to Yang Yang's table, and asked loudly, "Brother, why are you shaking your head? Do you dislike Lady Xiang singing?" Originally, everyone was immersed in the beautiful music, suddenly being interrupted, and such a loud voice at that. Everyone woke up from their state of enjoyment. However, when they saw that the person who flew into a rage was Wang Si, many people immediately stopped thinking about scolding him. Lady Xiang was immersed in singing and was suddenly interrupted, so she was displeased. However, when she saw that it was Wang Si, she knew that she couldn't afford to offend him. However, since she was on the stage, she naturally had to stand up and give her greetings. Then, with a voice as pleasant as an oriole, she said, "Young Master Wang, I'm really sorry." "Lady Xiang, this has nothing to do with you. I'm talking about the person who is dissatisfied with the music. Hey, I'm talking about you. Since you have the guts to shake your head, why don't you have the courage to stand up?" Wang Si interrupted Lady Xiang. If it were any other time, he would probably be very happy that this woman took the initiative to talk to him. However, he was angry now, and he was complaining about the injustice for the goddess in his heart. Naturally, he wouldn't answer more questions. The spearhead was pointed at Yang Qindong. From the moment Wang Si shouted, Yang Qindong knew that he was referring to someone, and the person he was referring to was him. Originally, he shook his head because he wasn't used to the music of this era. In addition, he felt that with Lady Xiang's condition, singing such a song was really uncultured and beneath his status. However, he didn't expect that he would be discovered and pointed out on the spot. His fourth brother, Yang Yang, had already mentioned Wang Xi's identity. He was the eldest grandson of the Minister of Personnel Wang Ji. With such an identity, it was natural for him to be full of confidence and arrogance. Of course, this was only in the eyes of others. In Yang Qindong's eyes, it was nothing more than a fleeting cloud. Not to mention Wang Xi. Even if his biological grandfather, Wang Ji, was here, Yang Qindong would do what he should do. He would never let himself be wronged because of the other party's identity and let others criticize him. Therefore, after glancing at Wang Xi, he chuckled and said, "What's wrong? Could it be that there's a rule that the listener can only praise the song and can't have other opinions?" Wang Xi was speechless. How could there be a rule that required the listener to listen to the song? This was a pastime, and one could just follow one's mood. However, although there was no rule, the person performing on the stage was Lady Xiang. She was the person that Wang Xi had been thinking about day and night. If it wasn't for her background, he would have begged his grandfather to take her as a concubine. However, the top courtesan was also a lowly person. Based on this rule, she could never enter the Wang family. As the saying goes, the best is what you can't get. It was precisely because he couldn't get her that Wang Xi felt the benefits of Lady Xiang. If he had extra money, he would definitely come to support her. Yang Qindong really looked down on the goddess in his heart. Based on this, he couldn't take it lying down. Yes, there isn't any law that stipulates this, but everyone who comes here is here for Lady Xiang. Are you going to say that they aren't? If you're not, why are you here? Please leave now. As he spoke, Wang Xi pointed in the direction of the door with an indignant expression. Wang Xi lived up to his name. He was indeed very smart. Knowing that he couldn't use the law, he used Lady Xiang's name. For a moment, it aroused the anger of the crowd. Most people stood up and pointed angrily at Yang Qindong in order to curry favor with Lady Xiang. They said, "If you don't want to watch, get out now." Not far away, the descendants of the two Grand Dukes didn't join in the condemnation. Instead, they watched the scene with great interest. They had already guessed Yang Qindong's identity. It was very likely that he was the sixth young master of the Yang family who presented the great gift to the emperor today. Because of this, he was given the position of secondary grade 5 servant to the crown prince. With such a big gift and the previous incident with Yang Bao, they didn't think that he was a master that could be easily manipulated by others. However, the situation was not good now. They wanted to see how the sixth young master of the Yang family would break the situation. So many people suddenly pointed their spears at Yang Qindong. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei instinctively wanted to flash in front of the young master to protect him. However, the sixth young master waved his hand as if he didn't care. He noticed that Wang Xi only asked him to get out in anger and didn't even add the word scram. From this, it could be seen that this person was reasonable. At least, he wasn't the kind of idiot who would bring trouble to himself. To put it bluntly, it was nothing more than the fact that he had previously overshadowed Lady Xiang with his gift. In addition, he had shown a trace of disrespect to Lady Xiang, which led to the incident. This was just the thought of a young and frivolous person. If it were any other time, Yang Qindong would have just laughed and left the place after that. If he did this, perhaps others would say that he was weak. However, real weakness didn't depend on how others evaluated him. It depended on whether he had a strong heart. There was no doubt that Yang Qindong had a strong heart. However, he still wouldn't leave, not for any other reason, but because it didn't fit in with his plan. From the moment he entered the Nine Arts workshop, Yang Qindong had been implementing his plan to recruit talents. This included the 1,000 taels of silver as a reward. It seemed like he was spending a lot of money, but in fact he was just using this opportunity to leave a deep impression in Lady Xiang's heart. Then he could use this opportunity to chat with her. He believed that with his understanding of music, it wouldn't be difficult to persuade her to join his force. Because he came with the intention of recruiting her, and Lady Xiang was a talent who met his standards. He couldn't just leave so casually. Losing face was a small matter, but ruining his plan was a big matter. Are you young Master Wang? Yang Qindong decided to fight back. At the same time, this was a good opportunity for him to perform. As long as there was an opportunity, he would grasp it tightly. Yes, Wang Si saw that Yang Qindong wasn't displeased by his words at all. On the contrary, he treated him with respect, so the anger in his heart lessened. I'm Yang Qindong. Greetings. The sixth young master chuckled and cupped his fists. After announcing his name, Yang Qindong waited to see the changes in everyone's expressions. Reality didn't disappoint him. As expected, many people's expressions changed drastically. Regardless of whether it was Yang Bao or today's auspicious item, potato, they were enough to make him famous. He wasn't a nobody. As the saying went, a person's name was like a tree's shadow. After his name was announced, many people's attitudes changed. After knowing that he was the founder of Yang Bao, the author of the books Condor Shooting and Xiao Li's Flying Dagger, and that he was a fifth-rank official, many people who thought they weren't strong enough quickly shut their mouths. This was the reality. When someone's strength was much stronger than yours, it was another matter whether you still wanted to find trouble with them. This could be said to be selfish, but it was also human nature. Besides, it was true that they were here to see Madame Shui, but they wouldn't offend a young fifth-grade official for such a trivial matter, let alone for such a woman. After his name was announced, many people suddenly shut their mouths and returned to their seats. They were completely different from the people who had been heckling just now. Chapter 66. Wang Si frowned slightly when the situation changed. Then he quickly adjusted his mentality and sneered. What's wrong? Yang Jima, are you trying to oppress me with your power? No, I just want to announce my name so that everyone can criticize me better. Yang Qindong smiled and waved his hand. Then he changed the topic and asked. Young Master shook his head because he felt that such a song was not suitable for Miss Yang to sing. The song was too bitter, so he shook his head. I didn't expect young Master Wang to see it. It's embarrassing. Wang Si took the initiative to say that he shook his head. It showed that he did not look down on Miss Yang, but it was because the song was not suitable. In this way, it immediately attracted Miss Xiang's gratitude on the stage. Madame Xiang was unhappy that Madame Xiang had pointed the spearhead at her. She was just a courtesan. In the end, she was just a somewhat famous actress. Everything she did was just to earn more money and live a better life. In her later years, she would have something to rely on. How could she be willing to participate in the struggle? On the surface, these people were complaining for her, but they just wanted to perform well. They wanted to leave a deeper impression on her so that they could take her body. She had seen this kind of thing many times. No matter what the result of the fight was, it seemed that it would only be bad for her and not good for her. However, this was how it was in the entertainment field. The fighting and scheming between the top courtesans and the mutual deception between the guests was unavoidable and could not be avoided. She wanted to withdraw from the stage when such a thing happened just now. However, these people came for her. If she withdrew now, she did not know what kind of trouble it would cause. Just when she was helpless, Yang Qindong took the initiative to stand up and said that it had nothing to do with him. How could Miss Xiang not be grateful? With just a few words, Yang Qindong took all the blame on himself. In this way, it seemed that he was magnanimous and decent, not caring about other people's faults. Wang Si saw that Miss Xiang had been taken out of the picture as soon as Miss Xiang said those words. Wang Si's momentum had weakened, and Miss Xiang didn't even intend to pursue the matter. If Wang Si still fought for justice for Miss Xiang, wouldn't it be a little petty? He was smart at the moment. Since he could not put the blame on Miss Yang, he would put the blame on Yang Qindong. Let's see how Yang Qindong would explain it. Oh, in that case, we have wronged the sixth young master. Wang Si only said that he was the sixth young master and did not mention his official position. This was also smart of him. After all, if he had to call young Master Wang's official position, it would only weaken his momentum. But the sixth young master has always been a man of many talents. The books he wrote are even more wonderful, making people forget to eat and sleep after reading them. If he is so talented, he must have a good opinion on the path of music. Wang Si is not talented, but I am willing to learn a thing or two. Wang Si was unyielding, or rather, he wanted to use this opportunity to get back at young Master Wang. As long as Yang Qindong said that he did not understand the path of music, he would attack Yang Qindong for saying that he did not understand the path of music. If he were to say that he understood the way of music, then he would definitely have to perform a song on the spot. If that was the case, then wouldn't a dignified imperial scholar, a fifth-ranked official, have to sing some kind of romantic and elegant song? Wouldn't that be a laughingstock? All in all, this was a dead end where everything he said was wrong. There was no lack of smart people in the hall. After hearing Wang Si's words, they looked at Yang Qindong with a gloating expression, waiting for him to fall into their trap and be humiliated. Fourth brother Yang was naturally a smart person. One had to know that being a dandy in the capital was not something that could be done with a little status. Most of the time, one had to use their brains. Seeing that someone was pointing at his sixth brother, he stood up agitatedly, wanting to refute the accusation. However, before he could say anything, Yang Qindong grabbed his arm, and then a huge force came, forcing him to sit back in his chair. Yang Qindong was still wondering where his sixth brother got this strength from when he heard Yang Qindong's voice. It seems that this young master knows a little about the path of music. Ah, did he just admit it? Hearing this answer, everyone in the audience suddenly became excited. In their view, the best way for Yang Qindong to deal with this matter was to leave without saying anything. It was fine if he lost some face like that, but at the very least, it wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. But since he had admitted to it, how could Wang Si let him off? Sure enough, when he heard Yang Qindong say that he knew a little about the path of music, Wang Si was overjoyed, and he quickly said, "Oh, then I wonder if sixth young master can sing a song so that we can see what kind of song can be considered a good song. What kind of song can make people shake their heads?" Wang Si spoke quickly, as if he was afraid that Yang Qindong would go back on his words. After he finished speaking, he bowed to Lady Xiang on the stage and said, "I'll have to trouble Lady Xiang to let go of the zither and give our sixth young master a chance to perform." This action was equivalent to putting Yang Qindong on a horse. At this moment, if the sixth young master backed out, he would only be seen as a braggart and would be looked down upon. "Ah, sixth brother, you can't. I remember that there is an urgent matter at home. Let's go back first." Seeing all this, Yang finally realized that the matter had become serious. He quickly stood up and spoke in a voice that others could hear. "Ha ha ha." Suddenly, there was a burst of laughter. Obviously, everyone could see that Yang was looking for a way out and an excuse to leave. Yang's reaction is quite fast. Su Qingzong, the son of the Duke of Wei, who had been sitting at the table and watching the show, laughed with a trace of admiration in his eyes. In his heart, he also thought that this was the only way out for Yang Qindong. Not only Su Qingzong, but almost half of the people thought so. Some of them even looked disappointed because the show was about to end and there was no more fun to be had. Just when everyone thought that Yang Qindong would definitely leave, he suddenly asked, "It's so late. Nothing will happen at home. If there is something, it will be something in your heart." He rejected it. Everyone heard Yang Qindong's voice clearly. Then they looked at him with eyes full of surprise, curiosity, and even more excitement. Yang Qindong finally couldn't stand the provocation and entered the trap. If that was the case, wouldn't there be a good show to watch? They thought that after tonight, they would be able to boast to their friends that they saw a fifth-rank official of the imperial court singing a love song. That would definitely be a shocking thing. Sixth brother. Yang had already given him a way out and didn't hesitate to attract the ridicule of others. He never thought that his sixth brother would reject his kindness. For a moment, he was stunned and didn't know what to say. On the other hand, Yang Qindong patted his fourth brother's shoulder lightly to express his gratitude for his kindness. Then he laughed and walked towards the spectator's stand. Yang Qindong's action quickly attracted the attention of everyone present. Some people were still in shock and hadn't recovered from their shock. What's going on? Is the sixth young master of the Yang clan really going up to sing a love song? If that's the case, then there's going to be a big joke. Although there was no rule saying that an official couldn't do that, such a thing was a disgrace to the educated. Presumably, after this matter, someone would impeach him in the imperial court. If something went wrong, it would create an eternal joke that he would be promoted today and dismissed tomorrow. At this time, even Su Qingzong and Zhang De, the descendants of the two marquises, couldn't help but stand up. They all felt the seriousness of the matter. If they were really impeached in the imperial court, as the people present, they would definitely be reprimanded because of this. Later, their father would probably ground them or something like that. On the stage, Lady Xiang had been standing there in shock and didn't know what to do. Of course, she knew what the imperial court's attitude towards them was. She also knew what serious consequences would there be once the sixth young master of the Yang clan, a fifth-rank official of the imperial court, sang on the stage in front of her. If the punishment was light, the 9 Arts workshop would be confiscated and people would be assigned to the musical house, officials, prostitutes. If the punishment was heavy, they would be assigned to the frontier and banished to the army. That would be a fate worse than death. Thinking of these terrible consequences, Lady Xiang naturally stepped forward and wanted to stop Yang Qindong. However, before she did so, the sixth young master showed a confident smile. Lady Xiang, stand aside and listen to the new song I brought. What do you think? It seemed that she was infected by Yang Qindong's smile, or perhaps she was forced by his momentum. In short, at this moment, Lady Xiang took several steps back and gave the stage to Yang Qindong, who was in a cyan robe. Standing on the stage, Yang Qindong found that he could see everyone in the field more clearly. Then he smiled. Then he said, "After listening to the song Blooming Flowers, I felt that although it was artistic, it was still too sentimental. It couldn't be sung by everyone and was catchy." What? Everyone can sing it? Catchy? The people who heard it were shocked. Are you kidding? Who are they? How could it be possible for her to sing so casually? Wouldn't that be degrading themselves? Of course, no one would admit that the song at that time was too difficult and that not everyone could sing that tune. No one would admit that they were not capable enough. It seemed that he had known that everyone would be surprised. Yang Qindong laughed and said, "The song the young master is going to sing next also has some artistic conception, but more importantly, it is catchy. Unless the 5 notes are really incomplete, everyone can learn it after learning it once. Next, I'm going to embarrass myself. Beta Persei, give me the thing." Yang Qindong's shout startled everyone. But then a black shadow flew out of the air and fell steadily into Yang Qindong's hand. Then he took off the black cover that wrapped the thing. Suddenly, something that looked like a pipa but was not a pipa fell into everyone's sight. Yang Qindong carried it on his body. Chapter 67. It was a guitar, and it was also a modern product. It was something from Yang Qindong's dormitory, and it appeared here together with Datsung. As mentioned before, Yang Qindong would act as anyone in order to complete various tasks. He once learned vocal music to get in touch with his target. Now was the time for him to put on a good show. With the guitar in his hand, Yang Qindong's confidence overflowed. He originally brought this thing with him to discuss things with Lady Xiang. Yang Qindong knew that for talented people, especially people like Lady Xiang, money could only be the 3rd most important thing. Love and talent were the most important things for them. Love was something that Yang Qindong couldn't give them now. He didn't even have a wife. If he married a slut first, he didn't know how others would criticize him. At that time, it was really a matter of public criticism. Since that was the case, he could only give them talent. He believed that the beauty of music was universal. Just like the people in the future, there were people who liked Beijing opera and Kunku opera. He did not believe that the songs of the future would not work in this era. The popular and catchy feeling would be unforgettable once they came into contact with it. For example, the few military songs that he taught were already proof. Even if the military songs could be accepted by the people of the current era, he also asked Xiaoyu. She said that the military songs were really good. The beautiful melody was not something that those people of the current era could sing. It was Xiaoyu's words that gave Yang Qindong confidence. That was why he dared to stand on this stage and perform. However, even though he was confident in his heart, Yang Qindong still did not want to use something too advanced to stimulate others in the beginning. For example, if he used Jay Chou's nunchaku, the speed of the singing would probably be too fast. With a hum and ha-ha, people would be confused. If they could not hear it clearly, how could they learn it? Therefore, he had to first use something that was more popular and more accepted in this era. Although it was as distant, at least they could understand the meaning of the words. Today, not only was Yang Qindong going to sing, but he was also going to teach. The people present were his first batch of listeners and students. Now that he had decided to sing, everyone in the hall held their breaths. They wanted to see what the sixth young master, who was known as multi-talented, was going to sing. Just as everyone was building up their emotions, Yang Qindong suddenly put his guitar behind his back and said with a smile, "Since everyone is giving me face, today this young master will follow the rules and do something exciting. How about it?" Although the question was asked, there was no reply for a long time because no one knew what he was going to do. Only Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei reacted quickly and answered loudly, "Okay." The two of them were used to the sixth young master being outstanding. In their eyes, as long as the sixth young master wanted to do something, there was nothing he could not do, and nothing he could not do well. Singing was naturally the same. For example, weren't those military songs from the sixth young master's mouth? Now that they all knew how to sing, everyone said that it was good. Haha. Seeing that there were only two people supporting him, Yang Qindong did not care. Instead, his body first relaxed, then tensed up. He immediately took out his singing skills, and then a loud and clear voice came out from his mouth. That day, Grandpa took me to see Beijing opera. I saw a lot of big faces on the stage. Red, white, yellow, green, blue, grinning and staring. They sang and shouted at the same time. Wow, 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 wow. It was like thunder chattering in my ears. His opening speech had shocked everyone. That clear voice, without any hesitation, knocked on their hearts like a hammer, making them feel carefree for no reason. The blue-faced Dou Erdan stole the horse. The red-faced Guangong fought Changsha. The yellow-faced Dianwei. The white-faced Chow Chow. The black-faced Zhang Fei called Cha-Cha. Suddenly, the climax began, which was the easiest part for people to learn to sing. As soon as the lyrics came out, many people became serious and even excited. At this moment, Su Qingzong and Zhang De opened their mouths wide. Wang Si, who was looking for fault, also opened his mouth wide, showing an expression of disbelief. The whole hall was also very quiet, and only Yang Qindong's loud voice was still surging out. To be honest, the Peking opera's face is really good, but the singer is singing in a dialect. I can't understand it no matter how hard I listen to it. The third part was said casually, but it seemed to be referring to something. The rhythm of Lady Xiang's singing was too slow, and even people who heard it for the first time couldn't understand it. As soon as the words came out, it was obvious that Lady Xiang, who was standing aside and didn't know what to do, hurriedly lowered her head. It was not because she was afraid, but because she was shy. Then came the climax. The purple heavenly king holds the pagoda. The green devil fights the yaksha, the golden monkey king, the silver demon, the gray elf, ha ha ha. In order to let people in the hall understand the meaning, Yang Qindong tirelessly sang it 5 times in a row. He didn't stop until he felt that his throat was a little dry. Fortunately, on the 3rd time at the climax, there were already people singing along. After all, as Yang Qindong said, the lyrics and melody were simple, easy to understand and easy to sing. By the 4th time, more and more people began to sing along. By the 5th time, more than half of the people could already sing along with the song. Just when everyone was used to the melody and wanted to continue singing until the end, Yang Qindong suddenly stopped. He couldn't sing Rap Mask too softly. He really felt that his mouth was dry. Fortunately, there was someone who understood him. Tiger's Mane had already prepared tea and was waiting by the side. When he saw the 6th young master stop, he quickly handed him the tea. After Yang Qindong drank it up, he turned around and walked back to the stage. At this time, too many people were still immersed in Rap Mask. It was the first time they heard such a simple and high-spirited song, and they felt that it seemed to be something prepared for their men. For something like this, what's the harm in singing it in front of others? What's the harm? Just when everyone was still immersed in this passionate Rap Mask, a very light voice suddenly sounded. After everyone was stunned, they looked at the stage and saw Yang Qindong gently moving the guitar while speaking softly. A long time ago, there was a firearms camp. Song Lao-san and his family lived next to them. They had nothing to do and even smoked big cigarettes. Big cigarettes existed in the 6 Dynasties era and were used as a tribute in the Tang Dynasty. There were already many people who smoked in the country in the late Ming Dynasty. The old couple had no children, so they gave their daughter a pet name, Dalian. When Dalian grew to the age of 16 or 17, she was really slim and graceful. The matchmakers kicked the door down, but Song Lao-san and his wife only ate, drank, and played all day long. They didn't care about their daughter's marriage. Later, they met a young farmer, Tong Xiaolu, and the two of them fell in love secretly. Once, Tong Xiaolu came to Dalian's house. The two of them were secretly having a rendezvous and were discovered by their parents. This time, they got into big trouble. It was an insult to their ancestors and a disgrace to their family. Dalian's father used a leather whip to beat Dalian until her skin and flesh were torn open. He gave her a kitchen knife, a rope, and a pair of scissors and told her to kill herself. In the end, Dalian was forced to jump into the Qingshui River at the entrance. When Tong Xiaolu heard that Dalian had jumped into the river and died, he brought the joss paper to the Qingshui River. On a windy and rainy night, he came to pay respects to his sister, Dalian. After paying his respects, poor Tong Xiaolu also jumped into the river. This was a tragic love story where both sides died for each other. First, he narrated the story in a narrative way. Then, the sound of the guitar accelerated, accompanied by Yang Qindong's clear voice. The tip of the peach leaf is sharp, and the willow leaves fill the sky. Dear Lord Ming, listen to me carefully. This matter happened at Shijing's Blue Indigo Factory. In the Blue Indigo Factory's firearms camp, there's a Song Lao-san. Speaking of this Song Lao-san, the couple smoked a lot and never had a son to give birth to a daughter, Chanwan. Amidst the soft singing, the story was slowly spat out. The content was clear, and the melody was easy to understand. It allowed people to quickly immerse themselves in it. The people in the audience who were originally agitated by the Rap Mask began to calm down. Then they were brought into the story and could not extricate themselves. In particular, Miss Yang, who was standing at the side, was already in tears. It was obvious that she had judged others by herself and thought of herself. In some ways, how could they not be the same? There were many things that were beyond their control, especially when it came to love. How could they have more choices? Yang Qindong's voice continued. He still wanted everyone to understand. After the first time, he only paused for a moment before singing the second time. Then, on the third time, Miss Yang had already adjusted her emotions. She held the guqin and began to cooperate with Yang Qindong. It had to be said that the top courtesan was indeed the top courtesan. In terms of understanding and acceptance of music, she was indeed much faster than Yang Qindong. At least if it were him, it would be very difficult for him to completely understand the melody after listening to it twice. Miss Xiang did it. Not only that, but because the lyrics were easy to understand, she even began to sing along. At the backstage, the head courtesan, Cui Na, was quickly writing down the lyrics with a brush. She had a feeling that this song, exploring the Qingshui River, would become very popular. If the Nine Arts Workshop could be the first to sing it, it would definitely be very popular. At that time, customers would come in droves, and their business would be several times better. They would even be able to get more money when they tipped people. Of course, this was based on the sixth young master's authorization. This time he sang it 4 times. When he saw that Miss Xiang was almost done, Yang Qindong laughed and stopped playing the guqin. He stood up and looked at Wang Si, who still looked like he wanted to continue. "Young Master Wang, what do you think of my song?" Chapter 68. All right. Wang Si was a straightforward person. He stood up immediately. Not only did he say good, but he also sighed and said apologetically, "Wang Si underestimated the sixth young master previously. I sincerely apologize to you. I hope the sixth young master won't take it to heart." "Haha, what's there to take it to heart? Speaking of which, you also contributed. If you hadn't provoked me like this, I'm afraid this young master wouldn't have dared to come up on stage and embarrass myself." Yang Qindong laughed without the slightest hint of blame. Wang Si was also a clever person. He smiled and said, "Then we won't have the good fortune to enjoy such beautiful music, right? Ha ha ha." Immediately, the two of them smiled at each other and the enmity between them disappeared. The others immediately applauded. Affected by the atmosphere, Duke Wei's son, Su Qingzong, also stood up. He was obviously older than Yang Qindong, but he still cupped his fists and said, "Sixth young master, Su Qingzong rarely admires people. You are one of them. Greetings." "Greetings, eldest young master Su." Yang Qindong didn't expect Su Qingzong to stand up at this time. This was the descendant of Duke Wei and would be the next Duke Wei. He didn't dare to slight him and cupped his fists to return the greeting. On the other side, Duke Zhang Fu's second son, Zhang Da, also stood up and cupped his fists. "Sixth young master, your performance and music are indeed easy to understand and catchy. Zhang Da intends to make friends with you, but I wonder if there are any other songs for people to enjoy?" When Zhang Da said this, everyone's eyes fell on Yang Qindong. Even Lady Xiang's face was full of anticipation. "Haha, haven't you enjoyed enough?" Yang Qindong laughed heartily. He thought that he had to strike while the iron was hot. While these people were still able to accept the new music, he should release some more. Immediately he nodded heavily. "All right. Since that's the case, second young master Zhang also said that we should make friends. Since that's the case, I'll give everyone a song called Friends." With a smile, Yang Qindong picked up the guitar on his body and began to play it gently. "All these years, I've been alone. The wind has passed, the rain has gone, I've cried, I've made mistakes, but I still remember what I've persevered for. Only when I've truly loved someone will I understand that I'll be lonely. I'll look back, I'll have dreams, I'll have you in my heart, a seemingly peaceful piece of music poured out the bits and pieces of a person's growth process." Then the voice suddenly rose, and the eyes looked at Zhang Da, Su Qingzong, Wang Si, Yang, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and everyone else in the field singing, "Friends walk together for life." Those days will no longer exist. One sentence, a lifetime of love, a glass of wine. Friends have never been lonely. Once I call you a friend, you will understand. Every time Yang Qindong's eyes landed on someone, that person could not help but straighten his body. He was excited to receive the sixth young master's gaze. This was one of the songs that made Zhou Huajian famous. Once this song was played, it was naturally unrivaled. After only 2 performances, more and more people below the stage responded. Many of them even had tears in their eyes, as if they had experienced the meaning of being friends again from this song. As soon as the 3 new songs of Rap Mask, Exploring Qingshui River, and Friend came out, everyone looked at Chu Fifan with more admiration in their eyes. No one knew who took the lead to shout, Dong Shuai! East Marshal. One more song. East Marshal. East Marshal. It was as loud as thunder. The loud voice spread out from the 9 Arts Square, causing the passers-by to stop and look at each other. They could not understand what was going on here today. After the shouting, Yang Qindong kept his guitar and walked down the stage with a big smile. He returned to his table. His 4th brother, Yang, who had been sitting there all this while, was already blushing. When he saw Qindong sitting down, he said, "6th brother, you're really something. Once tonight's matter is spread out, your name will be known throughout the entire capital tomorrow." Yang Qindong smiled and shook his head. This was only the beginning. He had only brought out a small portion of the things that he knew, and it had already caused a commotion in the capital. If these people were to take a look at Crimson City, wouldn't their eyeballs fall out? Yang Qindong's expression was calm, but the people in the audience seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. After listening to the 3 completely different songs, they had gradually accepted this new style of music. There were even a few people who gathered together and began to memorize the lyrics of the 3 songs. One after another, they chatted happily. Those who did such things were either people without status or people who felt that their status was not good enough. For example, the son of Duke Su Qingzong, the second son of Duke Ing, Zhang De, and the grandson of Wang Ji, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Si, did not bother to do such things. Instead, they held their wine glasses and walked over to Yang Qindong's table. Those who were able to come to the 9 Arts Square and become regulars here were all people who loved music. The 3 people who were shocked by the 3 songs took the initiative to walk over to Yang Qindong's table. It was not because he was a secondary class, rank 5 official at such a young age, but because they admired his talent. The 3 songs just now allowed them to understand what it meant to be a high mountain and flowing river, and what it meant to be a heavenly sound. It could be said that the appearance of the 3 songs had completely overturned their understanding of music. At this moment, they were truly impressed by Yang Qindong's talent. Walking over to him was just an act of goodwill. Naturally, Yang Qindong, who wanted to make friends with influential officials, would not let go of such an opportunity. He immediately drank and chatted merrily with the 3 people, including 4th brother Yang. There were 5 people in total. They chatted merrily, and laughter could be heard from time to time. Dong Shuai, these 3 songs of yours are truly unforgettable. It's so refreshing. Su Qingzong, who was shaking his head, said with a flushed face, "That's right. Compared to the songs I've heard in the past, it's obvious who's better. I'm afraid that I'll have to suffer in the future." Zhang De, the second son of Duke Ing, had a look of pity on his face, as if he was sad that he would not be able to hear such songs in the future. Sai, second young Master Zhang, you're right. With Dong Shuai around, why would we worry about not being able to hear such beautiful songs in the future? Isn't that right? As Wang Si spoke, he winked at Yang Qindong, clearly saying that if we want to listen to songs in the future, we'll have to look for you. The 3 people here, one asking and one answering, seemed to be expressing their own opinions, but in reality, they were just testing him. Yang Qindong was well aware of this, but he didn't point it out. Instead, he went with the flow and said, "In the future, if you want to listen to music, you can't look for me. No matter what, this young master is still a 5th-rank official of the imperial court. If I really do that, those imperial censors will report me to the emperor." When he mentioned the imperial censors, the 3 people's expressions changed. The hierarchy of the dynasty was very strict, and people were divided into 3, 6, and 9 ranks. Entertainers were of a lowly background and were looked down upon the most. Any large family would not marry a woman of this background, even if they wanted to take a concubine. Not to mention that Yang Qindong was a fifth-rank official in the imperial court. Although this official position was only a low-ranking official, and he had received it after offering the potato, it was still an official. Once there was a crown prince in the future, his power would naturally be used. If he were to sing, it would be a scandal. It would be seen as a disgrace to the imperial court. If that really happened, the spittle of the imperial censor would drown the entire imperial court. When that time came, not only Yang Qindong, but the entire Yang family would be implicated. When they thought of the consequences, Su Qingzong and the others could not help but be startled, and then they all shook their heads. Seeing that the three of them knew the serious consequences, Yang Qindong chuckled. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that Lady Xiang was looking at him from not far away. Cui Na, who was standing beside her, had an anxious look on her face. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he opened his crescent-shaped folding fan with a swish, gently fanning his elegant and handsome face. Come, drink wine, drink wine. There's wine today, so let's drink in the morning. While calling out to Su Qingzong and the others, Yang Qindong was waiting for the fish to take the bait. On one side of the stage, Lady Xiang clenched her fists. Because she was using too much strength, her slender fingers were starting to turn white. However, she did not care at all. Her gaze was fixed in the direction of Yang Qindong. She pursed her lips and did not speak. She was not as calm as before. Beside Lady Xiang, the middle-aged but still charming Cui Na was chattering endlessly. Xiang, do you really plan to take the sixth young master as your master? Although his elder sister was also amazed by the 3 songs he played just now, he was still an official and a noble. We are just the lowest performers, and the difference in status is too great. Even if you are the famous Lady Xiang of the capital, if you want to take him as your master, I'm afraid he will not agree. You will only be asking for your own humiliation. Lady Xiang, who had already gathered some courage, clenched her fists even tighter, and there was a hint of struggle in her eyes. However, in the end, she still did not take the step, as if her feet were tied to a boulder. Yang Qindong, who was sitting there drinking wine and chatting with his new friends, noticed that Lady Xiang did not come over in the end. Instead, she disappeared on the side of the stage with the help of Cui Na, the procuress. He could not help but sigh in his heart. It seems that I have overestimated Lady Xiang. She is a woman after all, and her status is still inferior. She doesn't even have the courage to ask me for advice. Originally, I planned to take her as my subordinate after I appeared today, but I have to give up for the time being. Although the plan had encountered some temporary difficulties, in Yang Qindong's view, it was not a bad thing. At least tonight, he had made a name for himself with the 3 songs. Lady Xiang might have had too many concerns, but there would eventually be bold female artists. Opportunities were always for those who were prepared. After drinking 3 more cups of wine, the sound of the watchman rang out on the street outside the Jiu Arts workshop. 1 hour. Chapter 69. There was a night ban in the Ming dynasty. The rules were clear. Once the drum was rung at 3:00 in the morning, no one was allowed to go out. Only after the morning bell was rung at 3:00 in the morning would the ban be lifted. Those who walked on the streets during the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th night would be flogged 50 times. Those who broke the law after the 1st night ban and before the 5th night ban would be flogged 40 times. As soon as the drum was rung, the guests in the hall began to walk out. Yang Qindong lived outside the capital, so he naturally had to be 1 step ahead. Otherwise, he would not be able to make it to the southern city gate in time. Everyone, it's time. Farewell. Yang Qindong stood up and cupped his fists at Su Qingzong and the others. Take care, Dong Shuai. Su Qingzong and the others stood up with smiles on their faces. Although they had just met, they felt regretful that they had not met sooner. If there was anything Yang Qindong gained tonight other than making a name for himself, It was probably making these three friends. Of course, more importantly, the news of the three new songs spread rapidly in the capital that night. By the next day, there were already people on the streets humming the new songs that were fresh and catchy. The tip of the peach leaf is the tip of the tip, the willow leaves hold up the sky. My dear Lord, listen to me carefully. In the morning, the servant girl, Little Wire, went out to buy breakfast as usual. As soon as she walked out of the courtyard, she heard two scholarly young men humming this song that she had never heard before. For a moment, Little Wire felt a refreshing feeling rush into her heart. For a moment, she stood there and listened in a daze. It was not until the two scholars were far away that she came back to her senses. Then, with a heart full of curiosity, she went to the nearest breakfast shop. When she returned to the courtyard after buying breakfast and saw the young lady getting dressed, she absent-mindedly placed the breakfast box on the round wooden table. Then she rested her chin on her hands and carefully recalled the song she heard in her mind. Then she hummed softly. After snorting twice, she shook her head forcefully. Her face was filled with anxiety, as if she had lost something she loved. Little Wire, what's wrong with you? After repeated this, Little Wire was still immersed in her own world. The young Miss's voice, which was as pleasant as an oriole's, entered his ears. What are you humming? It sounds really nice. Ah, young Miss. At this time, Xiao Wei felt as if she had just woken up from a dream, but her forehead was already covered in sweat. I heard two people humming this song when I went out to buy breakfast. It gave me a refreshing feeling, so I learned a few lines. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to remember it. At this moment, Xiao Wei looked as if she hated herself to the core, as if not remembering the lyrics and melody was a huge mistake. What? The young lady's expression suddenly changed. Xiao Wei, are you saying that the song you were humming just now was a new song that people on the streets were singing? Ah, miss, is this a new song? What kind of new song is it? Why haven't I heard it before? The young miss, whose arm was being held by the maid Xiao Wei, had not yet fully put on her clothes. Under the red dress, her slender neck was undoubtedly exposed. Her soft breasts were like white jade half-covered. Her waist was tied, and a pair of slender and well-proportioned legs were exposed. Even her beautiful lotus feet were silently enchanting, as if inviting people to look at her seductively. If there were people who frequented the red light district here, they would definitely exclaim Madame Xue and call out her identity. Madame Xue's full name was Xiao Yuxue. She was one of the famous courtesans in the red light district of the capital. Together with Madame Xiang Donghanxiang, they were called half of the beauties in the city. It meant that both of them were more beautiful than half of the city. If they were combined, they would be the most beautiful woman in the city. Last night, Madame Xiang was resting in the backyard of Baihua Hall because of her female physiology. Moreover, she was young and sleepy, so she did not know what had happened in Jiu Art's workshop. Naturally, she did not know about the three new songs. When she woke up early in the morning, she heard her maid Xiao Wei humming softly. She was attracted and wanted to ask what was going on. Of course it's a new song. You know what I do. If it's an old song, it's impossible that I haven't heard of it. Her tone was very certain. Madame Xue not only had snow-white skin, but also a beautiful voice. She was also very proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. If it was an old song, she would definitely have heard of it. It's a new song. Miss, you should learn it quickly. When you sing it, more people will come to our Baihua Hall. Then we will be able to suppress Jiu Art's workshop. Xiao Wei looked excited. Of course, whether it was because she wanted to listen to this song was unknown to outsiders. Bah! Madame Xue's red lips opened slightly. She really looked like she was exhaling. Since it's a new song, of course you haven't heard of it. If you have the time, why don't you go and find out where it came from? Oh, I'll go right away. The lively Xiao Wei agreed and rushed out of the room. When she saw Madame Xue, whose clothes were still slightly untidy, she shook her head. Xiao Wei is already 16 years old, but she still does things carelessly. I don't know who will marry her in the future. When it came to marriage, Madame Shui could not help but frown slightly. She thought of her own family background and Xiao Wei's family background. People like them did not have the right to pursue happiness. Perhaps the best ending for them was to grow old in Baihua Hall. But when she grew old, would there be a place for her here? Courtesan. It sounded like she was quite famous, but in the end, she was just eating the rice of youth. Once she grew old, her popularity would decline day by day. At that time, there would naturally be younger and more beautiful girls to replace her. After a long time, no one would remember her glory when she was young. Just like the lyrics of the later generations said, "One wrong step and you'll regret it forever." Dancers were also human. Who could she tell the pain in her heart? For the oppression of life, she swallowed her tears. Is this fate? Destined to live the rest of my life? It was because of the experience of countless predecessors that people like Madame Shui had long been prepared for it. She just wanted to earn more money while she was young. In this way, she would be able to feed herself when she grew old. The appearance of a new song was often the best opportunity. It could turn a person from a nobody to a world-famous person. At that time, there would naturally be some rich benefactors. With many followers, it would be the most glorious time of their lives. Madame Shui had a feeling that this song was so fresh and different from what she had learned before. Once she learned it, she would definitely become popular. She must learn this song. In the Hu mansion, Hu Yan got up, ate, and read as usual. Of course, the so-called reading was not the wonderful stories in Yang's newspaper, but the books on women's discipline and women's ethics that modern women must learn. As a woman, she had to marry and spend most of her life in her husband's family. How to be a good wife and take care of the family affairs for her husband was something that most women dealt with in their lives. If one wanted to do something, he naturally had to do it with his behavior. This required a woman to be educated and reasonable and to learn the 3 obedience and 4 virtues. The so-called 3 obedience and 4 virtues were the foundation of a woman's life. The 3 obedience referred to obey the father before marriage, to obey the husband after marriage, and to obey the son after the husband's death. The 4 virtues referred to virtue, appearance, speech, and work. That is to say, as a woman, the most important thing was moral character, to be able to stand upright. Then it was appearance, meaning that one should be dignified, steady, and courteous, not frivolous and casual. Speech, meaning that when conversing with others, one should be able to casually add meaning, be able to understand what others are saying and know what one should and shouldn't say. And the way of managing a family. The way of managing a family includes supporting one's husband and teaching one's children, respecting the old and loving the young, being diligent and thrifty, and other details of life. Not only that, there were also things like the 3 principles and 5 elements, etc. It was because of the etiquette and teachings in these so-called books that women's social status was not very high. If she married a man who liked her and was willing to share everything with her, it would be better. At least she still had the final say in the family. But if she met a man who did not know how to care for her, she would be like Yang Qi and Sister Yang, gradually becoming a servant. Hu Yan's grandfather, Hu Ming, was still alive. Although he was not young anymore, he was still healthy and was an important official in the imperial court. He was one of the 5 ministers entrusted to Xuanzong, and also held the position of Minister of Rights. Her father, Hu Chongning, was the governor of the Brocade Guards and held great power. He was in his 40s and was full of vigor. With such a grandfather and father, Hu Yan did not have to worry for the time being. Even if she married into her husband's family, with such a family, she would not suffer any losses. But in the end, she still had to rely on herself. Relying on her mother's family was not a long-term solution. This required Hu Yan to be strong enough in order to live a life without worry. Naturally, Things like female morality and female discipline were compulsory homework every day. Perhaps she was spoiled by her grandfather and father, but when Huyen read these books, she would feel sleepy. Although she had just woken up not long ago, her eyes were still listless. Her head also seemed to lack some support. From time to time, her head would fall down, but she still managed to hold on, making her look extremely adorable. Young Mississippi Huyen, who was hesitating whether or not to fight 300 rounds with the Duke of Zhou, was instantly awakened by a series of screams. At that moment, the Duke of Zhou was so frightened that he ran off to who knows where. After the screams, the servant girl, Xiao Qing, rushed into the study, bringing with her a whirlwind. If she ran 100 meters at this speed, she should be able to barely pass. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.